Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto joins Devils Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. A chilling breeze washed over the calm and quiet town on the outskirts of the Devil's side of the Underworld. There was, in a sense, nothing different about tonight than any other, at least that is how it would look to the normal observer. To those walking through the town, a group of 15, it was strange. The doors were bolted shut, and cow blood smeared on the front of them, cloves of garlic hung on strings around the handles, and all the windows were lined with salt. To the 15 walking through town, it was quite clear what was happening. After all, they were called here to deal with what had happened. Vampires. Or rather, vampire. Singular, on his own, young in age. He had golden blonde hair, leaving people to at first believe that he was an angel. His eyes were like icy blue crystals that looked straight through to your soul. Whisker-like marks adorned his cheeks, or at least that was what the description said. He gave off the feeling of a demonic fox, holding their lives in the palm of his young hand. "Are you sure he is still around here, Naya?" Come the strangely spoken words from the raven-haired woman standing rather close to a smiling white-haired male. The woman had a still developing bust, maybe in her early teens, 14 at the most. On the top of her head sprouted 2 cat ears, mirroring the color of her hair. She was clad in a black kimono, the shoulders cast down and resting on her biceps, barely containing her breasts inside the garment. It was held together by a yellow obi which was adorned with bells, really giving her the Catwoman feel. "You would dare question your queen?" A voice hissed beside her. The woman had long blue hair reaching down below her backside and sharp green eyes. She was clad in a white kimono like the other sans for the only male. His white hair and blood-red eyes were equally matched by the golden kimono he wore. He was a half-breed of the Amy household, one of the few final members and one that was thought of in some fashion by the ruling class of devils at the current time. "Kuroka, must you two always fight?" He didn't expect an answer from the two and proceeded to rub his hands gingerly together. "If I am able to use my last bishop on a vampire, I will finally have a strong enough peerage to win in the raiding games." Makibuta Amy, that was the name of Kuroka's king. A pig of a hormonal teenager who would sooner toss them to the ground and rape them than to actually help them further themselves. She had, thankfully, managed to cast an illusion over the man to make him believe she had a dick, thus he often kept his clingy hands off of her. It had not stopped it completely, as he often tried to fondle her breasts, but he had stopped trying to get into her pants, which was a relief. Her plan was to work for this guy for a while, make a name for herself and get traded out into a better peerage, one that was able to actually win in a raiding game. From there she could start making money to look after her sister properly and maybe even find a guy that was interested in helping her rebuild the Nekishu. It would require a lot of mating, so he had to have good stamina. A slight perverted grin slipped onto her face as she started to picture what the future could be like. Maybe she could even get Chiron to join in with them. Thankfully, these thoughts were able to drown out the arguing around her. That was until the temperature dropped drastically, and everyone became tense and on edge. "Pawns form a perimeter!" Makibuta roared, and the women quickly got into place, despite the shaking of their knees. Kuroka frowned. The vampire wasn't hiding like she had thought it would be. No, he was making it all too easy to find him. She looked up into the tree above to see him sitting there, his body resting against the trunk as his legs lounged out onto a thicker branch. She slyly licked her lips at the sight, though that seemed to get his attention. His head slowly turned to her, as he creaked open a single eye, meeting her gaze and freezing her in place. "We've lost," she trailed as her body sagged. Yum looked at her in confusion, while the Makibuta sneered. "Get up and fight, Kuroka." "We can't, ha." She swept her hand from side to side, uncovering the earth just below her and revealing a tag under it. It is a Shinto way of using magic. The pour life essence into ink and inscribe characters, symbols and other methods onto parchment to give it different effects. "Well, speak up, you damn girl. What the hell is the meaning to these?" Makibuta roared. He didn't feel like being shown up by some brat he couldn't even see. Kuroka weakly lifted her hand and pointed it at the tree where the vampire was sitting, drawing the attention of her peers as they looked up at the vampire. "It is a binding spell, one that only he can control." Makibuta lifted his fist, feeling the strain on his muscles as he slowly pulled it into the air and pointed at the male in the tree. "Do you know who I am, you trash? Some pillar devil that believes that the world owes him because he walks on it?" The blonde questioned without a second of thought on the matter. Now, if the situation were more relaxed, Kuroka may have actually snickered at his words. "If you know that, then why don't you just stop this farce and join my peerage?" The forest was incredibly quiet after that. The peerage watched as the blonde shifted his legs around and dropped from the tree, the air seemingly moving past him without a sound as he landed on the ground without so much as a cloud of dust erupting from the impact of his fall. It was as if he wasn't even there in the first place. merely just an image floating in air. Though Kuroka was proud of herself for being able to fully bask in his image despite the situation, his nice dress shoes, his black slacks and white dress shirt. The slacks were tight while the shirt was loose and flowing, the first couple of buttons undone showing off his developing muscles around his chest. No, that wasn't quite right, they were merely not developed for the purpose of being showy, they were muscles to function. Slim and strong, not bulky and flashy. That seemed to be the entire feel of this vampire. Everything about him screamed that he was made to kill. A being that had been feared for almost as long as the devil himself. They were the true rulers of the night, and this peerage had just walked right into the trap of one. No. It was so simple, his response, that it froze the peerage in a mental manner. Their master was refused so openly as if it was natural. They couldn't quite process the thinking of the blonde as he continued to move towards them. No? Did you just say no to me, Makibuta Amy? Did you not just hear what Naruto Faranum, said? The blonde, apparently called Naruto, stated in a tone of mock astonishment back at Makibuta. With calm steps he walked between the peerage, weaving so that he didn't touch them, like if he did he would be dirted. He came to stop in front of the rooks and lightly tapped a point in their shoulders, sending the duo to the ground, the same happening with the knights before he stopped and stared at Kuroka. Name? Kuroka Faranum, she replied to his words, watching for his reaction. She was merely hoping that she had been able to piece together the meaning of Faranum correctly. If she was right, it was Romanian for nameless. If that was the case, she would be able to use it as well. Though because she was using it as a name instead of actually speaking it, the others still would not be able to translate it with that language perk that devils had. It was a flaw, so to say. The vampire known as Naruto tilted his head to the side lightly as he bent down, placing a finger under the woman's chin in his crouched position before slowly standing up, dragging her up with him. How old are you, Nakomata Kuroka? F14. She stammered out, trying to avoid his gaze, though she found her eyes constantly pulling back to his icy orbs. Stop ignoring me! Roared Makibuta from his position a stride or so behind Kuroka. Naruto didn't even bother to glance at him. Shut that style you call a mouth. I am talking to someone of worth 14. You are my age, yet you are still somewhat lacking in ability. I wonder, do you not have the proper drive, or is this difference purely because of our birth? Do not bother trying to answer. It was a rhetorical question. He took a step forward, their bodies almost flush against each other, as he drew closer to her neck. The way your body reacts is quite marvelous. Your heartbeat is increasing more and more the closer I get. This scent is alluring, it draws you in, wanting to explore further. How stupid can a vampire be? That is a he. No matter what hangs from its chest, it is what's between the legs that counts. Naruto rose a brow at the pig of a man, slowly drawing back from Kuroka and seeing her bite her lip gently. The pawns around them weren't able to see her facial reactions as they were out of sight. The rooks and knights were out for the count, and no one would see what he was about to. He stepped back lightly, an inquisitive look on his face as he opened the front of Kuroka's kimono. He was not greeted to what he was told to. No, instead he was greeted to a small patch of black hair in the shape of a heart, and a carefully crafted slit between her legs, not a hanging member. Finding what he needed, he slowly stood back up, redoing the front of the kimono and giving nothing away with his expression. As you say, that was not what I expected. He leaned in again next to her ear, his breath tickling it lightly as her knees started to shake. It moved from her ear down towards her neck. She felt his teeth lightly trail across her skin before they sink in, though it wasn't painful as she thought it would be. No, it felt like her hardest of walls had broken. Like a bursting dam, she felt all of her emotions run through her body as a heat slowly started to spread from where his lips were on her neck. She almost felt like she was wanted, that if she continued to stay near this man, she would not feel alone. Then just as quickly as the feeling came, it started to fade as his teeth were removed. He took a small step back and licked his lips to savor the taste. You're an outsider here, aren't you? Do not worry, I have placed an illusion over us. Do I need to answer that question? Kuroka asked softly, her bottom lip quivering. A sprinkle of attention and a single bite had reduced her to this mess of emotions. No. I figured as much, considering you noticed that I hadn't bound you, yet you acted like I had. I watched your twitching hand. You were testing to see if you had been restrained. Like I said, you have worth which is wasted on the likes of this would-be devil that would do anything for power. I wonder, do you know why I denied his request? Naruto gave a light hum at the end of his question. Kuroka shifted her gaze slightly. You're already a devil, the smell is faint, but it is there. I can only wonder what kind of devil is able to tame a vampire like you. Behind them a large magic circle appeared. Its bright red color lit up the sky before a young girl walked out in a sundress. Her long red hair flowed down to the middle of her back as she puffed her cheeks out in irritation. Naruto. She growled out, though it mostly just looked adorable. Yes, Rias? Naruto replied calmly, it looked like he was used to this, which somehow scared Kuroka a little. She of course knew who the redhead was, Rias Gremory, the younger sister of Lucifer. Are you playing with other peerages and communities again? Rias, please. I would never cast an illusion over a town to make them believe they were under constant harassment of a vampire to drown out some devil who thought he could make me into a member of his peerage just to relieve my afternoon boredom. How could you think so little of me? He questioned with mock hurt. Rias in response let out a small sigh as she shook her head from side to side. The young 10-year-old often did not know how to deal with her queen and first friend. He had odd ways of getting rid of boredom. You could have come and found me. Ah, but you were busy studying. I didn't want to interrupt you. He stepped away and moved to the side of Rias, who seemed to get calmer as he approached, yet she was glaring at the black-haired teen before her. What did you do to them this time? Naruto scratched the side of his head lightly. I figured it would be best to have them trampled by a stampede of naked sumos. Mixed genders, of course. I would hate to be considered sexist. Rias seemed to nod at his words. It looks like you made a friend. Friend, I wouldn't say that. She is interesting, though not entirely interesting. I guess I will continue to listen out for her exploits, and if she becomes strong, I might even consider her a rival one day. Speaking of which, Kuroka, what piece are you? A bishop, she trailed lightly. Really, having such a young girl switch between giving her a glare or smiling at her was starting to unnerve her. Naruto gave a light chuckle. Sleep now, bishop. But remember this strongly, the peerage of Amy was defeated by a single member from the peerage of Rias Gremory, and maybe next time, this queen might be a little rougher. He drew his index and middle finger up to a single point and gave a sly smile, placing his left hand on the shoulder of Rias while his right stayed in front of him. The air around them changing as the thick fog embraced the two. Or maybe I will just toy with you again, Kuroka. Grow and give me someone to fight. In illusions, his voice faded as the fog left the clearing. The binding spell beneath them sizzled as the parchment caught fire, and her peers fell to the ground, seemingly knocked out from a heavy illusion. A faint smile graced her lips. If she could get into that peerage, she had no doubt she would be able to support Chiron better, not to mention she could learn alongside the blonde vampire who easily outclassed her peers and herself. She raised a hand up to her neck, where he had bitten her, and gave a slightly wider smile. He was someone she would have to seriously watch. Naruto's feet hit the marble floor for only a second before he scooped Rias up in his arms and dashed forward, nimbly avoiding the Harisen that struck where his head would have been. Had it have been a normal Harisen swung by a normal person, or even a normal devil, he would not have bothered to dodge. This paper fan, though, was wielded with a skill that not even those trained in the art of striking people of the head could obtain. He had heard whispers of it being called the Harisen of Death, though that was mostly from Surzex. Naruto, ever so slowly, turned his head and was met with the stoic glare of one Graphia Lucifuge. He was not sure if there was even such a thing as a stoic glare, though if there was, he was definitely receiving one now. He placed the shocked Rias on her feet and returned a glare to the woman, though his was hidden behind a cheerful expression. While that was pretty close, you could have hit someone there, Greichan. You'll have to forgive me, I was trying to swat a fly that suddenly appeared in front of me, she replied calmly, and somehow, even though he had been watching her, the Harisen vanished. As of moments ago, you are late for my lessons, Naruto-sama. A proper young man like yourself should be punctual. Naruto let out a tired sigh as he folded his legs up under him, hovering in the air. Flicking his wrist slightly, a wooden board formed in front of him along with quill, ink and parchment. Sorry about that, I guess I got a little carried away in having fun. Graphia's brow rose a fraction of 2 millimeters, showing she was paying attention to his words. And pray tell, did this fun involve terrorizing the peerage of others again? I like to believe that I am scouting for a worthy rival. Haven't found one yet though, he trailed lightly and hummed to himself. Oh sorry Rias, I forgot that I had lessons with Greichan this afternoon. Once I am done we can watch that new anime you got, okay? Rias, who had previously been looking down on hearing that Naruto had lessons, suddenly had a wide smile across her face with her hands clapped together in front of her, as she nodded frantically. That sounded like a good evening, watching her new anime with her queen. Yes. She would make them snacks, or maybe even those little blood cookies that her mother showed her. With new determination in her mind she nodded once more. Okay. But you better not be late, mister. Naruto smiled over his shoulder at the young girl. I won't be. Greichan wouldn't dare dash your hopes like that. He looked back to the woman who, and this was if Naruto was reading her correcting, had a wooden eye expression on her face. I think anyway. See you soon, Rias. Graphia and Naruto continued down the halls. He was ready to start making notes, as he followed her around with her duties. Are you truly searching for a rival? It was a question that Naruto wasn't expecting. Normally she would give him a scolding that looked like she was at least trying to reprimand his behavior, but they both know she wasn't really trying. Just like earlier, if she truly wanted to, she could have easily hit him with the paper fan. It was in that way that Naruto knew she understood him, at least somewhat. He wondered if that was why she was so focused on being a maid, that way she always had something to do. He tried to picture Grafia being a bundle of energy and had to fight the snort of laughter that tried to erupt from his mouth. She was a new mother. He had half expected her to be completely run down looking after the young lord. Though in a way it was good that she lived with the Gremorys. After all, Vanillana, or Lady Gremory, was all too happy to look after her grandchild while Grafia did her daily work, or when she simply needed to get away from the crying babe. Naruto pressed his lips together in thought, reflecting back on her previous question, not exactly sure how he got so easily sidetracked. There isn't anyone near my age that is near my level in strength, so I don't exactly feel the need to keep pushing myself. I like getting all of this knowledge, but I really just don't have the drive to continue training my abilities. It is no hidden truth that you are stronger than your king. Yes, she could defeat you, but her power of destruction is much too slow to come close to you at the current time. Sona Citri is the same. Her water magic is not yet at the level where it poses any threat, and neither of them have tried to train in physical combat. The only ones that you can't defeat that you have met would be those from the same peerage as myself, or those that serve Lord Gremory. But in those cases we have a large amount of time over you, so it is understandable that you would feel bored and tired of your current situation, Grafia stated calmly, though when she didn't get a response from the blonde she turned to him, only to have wide eyes directed at her. Did I say something shocking? No, it's just that is the most I have ever heard you say at a single time. He let out a tired sigh before dipping his quill in ink and making a few quick notes before holding up a piece of parchment that blew confetti out. Ding ding ding. We have a winner, he drawled, not showing any enthusiasm behind his actions. Grafia inwardly smiled. Not because Naruto was bored. No, she wasn't that cruel unless it was to her darling Surzex. No, it was more the fact that he could use his magic for such a manner without feeling bad about it. Or moreover, the fact that simple things like this were within reach from a simple flick of his fingers or wrists. I will arrange for you to meet someone who is in the same situation tomorrow then. So I would prompt you not to go rival scouting tomorrow. Good to see that you are calling it by its proper name. How strong is this person? Naruto folded some of the parchment in front of him into a bird and scribbled some symbols onto its wings, causing it to flap the folds of paper and take to the air around him. Grafia once more smiled, though this time it was external. Those strange symbols that the blonde used, they really didn't seem to have any limit. She held her finger out lightly and saw the blonde glance at her from the corner of his eye before another bird took off from Naruto's makeshift desk, this one much more full, having evenlets and talons. It gripped onto her finger lightly and preened itself for a moment before singing a small song. He has no talent for magic, though in terms of physical combat, I would say that he is either slightly above you, or at the same level. Is it that he has no interest in learning magic, or rather more that he cannot learn it because of a birth defect? It would be the second one, Naruto-sama, Grafia replied coolly. Naruto though felt his eyebrow twitch. Don't do that, Grey-chan. Don't be like everyone else. She could hear the tone in his voice, though outwardly he seemed normal, at least how he normally portrayed himself. She could hear the lonely child just beneath it. Vanillana, she had found him in the middle of a battlefield 4 years ago, his body littered with cuts and bruises. Men much larger and older than him lay dead around the blonde as his black nails still dripped blood from their last kill. As the Lady of Gremory approached, she saw the countless bodies around her turn into ash and float away in the wind, leaving the child alone, barely hanging on to his life. Grafia could remember the next part in great detail. It was something that still to this day haunts Vanillana, though Naruto seems to have forgotten it. She watched the blonde move, dashing across the field, not in fear of the devil in front of him, but like he had just remembered something important. When they arrived at the destination, Vanillana said she had to hold a hand over her mouth to stop herself from vomiting. A beautiful woman was pinned up on a cross to her wrists and ankles, a peaceful smile on her face while she had been stripped of her clothing, revealing her pale white skin, littered with signs of abuse. It was someone she knew, not in the friendly manner, but they had met before, Kagaya Carmilla. She was the height of beauty, either Seraphal nor Gabriel could compare, a woman with no equal. A force of nature that was part of the coalition to bring down Draco before he sent the world into night. While Vanillana was called the brunette Madam of Extinction, even she was scared of crossing the woman in front of her. Yet someone, had defeated her. The sound of wood breaking and searing flesh brought her attention back. Watching as Kagaya fell to the ground, her stand broken, she grimaced at what she saw leaking from between the woman's legs. Some people truly were scum that deserved no mercy. Mamika, Mama Lord Plicat Akam, Vie Puteti Tretsi Akam. Mamika? Mum, they're gone now, you can wake up now. Mum? Yet Kagaya did not move. No, the only movements she held were those that her child was forcing her to do. Vanillana watched, as did the child, as Kagaya Carmilla faded into ash. The child slowly stood, rubbing at his eyes before nodding. Mama bynam intels, voitain zamband odina akam la revider mama, ti ayubesk. Okay mum, I understand, I'll keep smiling, you rest now, goodbye mum, I love you. The young child nodded his head a few times before turning around, tears falling from his eyes but a bright smile on his face, looking at Venelana. Do you speak English? Venelana gave a slight nod of her head. I do, though I think it would be best if we get you someplace safe. The blonde gave her a confused look before slowly looking down at his feet. I don't have anywhere to go, lady. Then how about you come with me? A vampire prince. That is what the blonde was. Apparently people used to always bend over backwards for him, despite the fact that he just wanted to be treated normally. He couldn't remember that night, though he tried to smile as much as he could. Gray-fi. The silverette jumped in shock, only now noticing that Naruto was hovering in front of her, only inches away from her face with his brows furrowed lightly in concern. Are you okay? I was lost in my own thoughts. Naruto widened his eyes for a moment before nodding. I did that once, Dumpelstiltskin. He shivered at the memories. Dumpelstiltskin? Grafia questioned, only to see the blonde freeze and spin around in the air. Where? Seeing that the coast was clear, he started to rock back and forth as he hovered in front of Grafia. Shoo, he cannot see past his brow. She hummed at the boy, not sure how to proceed. He seemed to be completely taken by this character, and she had no idea how to deal with it. Were you talking to me, earlier I mean? Naruto's head shot up in her direction before he quickly nodded. Thankfully it seemed that diversion was the correct course of action in this situation. I was asking how Milikas was doing. Good. He can sleep through the night at times now. It is quite refreshing to be able to get a full night of sleep. Though speaking of which, when do you sleep? I always believed that I was the first to wake and the last to fall, yet you are always awake when I got to sleep, and always awake before I get up. She had found that suspicious at first, but had grown used to it. After all, nobody seemed to mind. I don't? He tilted his head to the side in confusion before pursing his lips together. I guess I should fix that. Maybe after my next slumber I will try going to bed like normal people. Naruto nodded a few times. I didn't think that anyone had noticed. It is my duty to look after the manor and all that reside inside of it. As head maid, it would be poor of me to not notice that you don't sleep. She brought a hand up to her forehead. This was the only real issue she had with the boy. If he wasn't told to do something, he just did what he thought was normal. For example, floating around the hall making paper birds. Okay, well, I guess I will enter slumber tomorrow. That should put me out for a couple of days. After that I will try to have a nightly sleep anyway. What am I learning today? Naruto asked, changing the topic again. Grafia gave a small nod, as if accepting his words. We will be doing history today. Devil or human? Human. Damn. The following day had people gathering around an arena. It was, for better or worse, a contest between two young boys. Both at the age of 14, one was clad in what seemed to be long black pants with a matching shirt, only having a silver/gray vest over the top of the shirt to serve as padding. He had black hair that seemed like it had a mind of its own and bright violet eyes. These eyes were currently looked onto the boy across from him. Gone was the somewhat nice outfit Naruto had been wearing the day before. Now he was clad in baggy black pants with matching black cloth shoes. He had a sleeveless GI top on, held together by a long and flowing orange obi. His blonde hair seemed to be longer than the day before, much longer. Now it came down to the middle of his back after being pulled up into a ponytail, kept in a nice formation by a steel cap at the end that had a bell attached to it. His icy eyes were looking at the boy across from him. Apparently this was Serorg Bale, a cousin of Rias and nephew to Venelana. Naruto craned his neck to the side as a loud crack rang out. You better be strong, everyone else our age is pretty weak. Serorg gave a wide grin, smacking his fists together. I was about to say the same thing. Rias has told me a bit about you. Apparently you are like a true demon when you get serious. I really hope she wasn't lying to me. A slight sound of irritation wrung from Naruto's mouth. The smile that had been in place fell instantly. Rias wouldn't lie to family. I'm not going to go all out from the start though. If you can force me to use that much against you, then you will see what she means. The arena has been placed under the same rules as a raiding game. While injuries are expected to come from this spar, you will be teleported to the infirmary before you get close to a critical state. Came the voice of Grafia over the speakers. Naruto spared a glance to where she was standing. Rias and Serzex were seated behind her, along with Lord and Lady Gremory. It seemed that everyone was here to watch. He cracked his knuckles and looked back towards Serorg, who deepened his stance. You may begin. The ground around Serorg exploded as he shot forward, his fist coming within an inch of Naruto's face before the blonde bent back at an awkward angle and shot his foot straight up before flipping back. Sarorg was barely able to avoid the kick. It had come at near lightning speeds and had a pinpoint accuracy. He landed from his dodge and brought his fingers up, feeling the smallest of cuts on his chin. A wild grin stretched across his face, to think that the boy across from him had split his skin with just the wind rushing off of his kick. Sarorg watched as Naruto gracefully landed on his feet, his arms crossed and an unreadable look on his face. Though Grafia found it prudent to note to those around her that was the look Naruto assumed when he was measuring someone with potential. She knew this, only from watching him a couple of times when he sneaked off to scout other peerages. "You're faster than I thought you would be," Naruto remarked. "It seems that I may have underestimated you slightly." "Don't go thinking that you are ahead from just that," Sarorg rebutted. The blonde tilted his head lightly to the side. "No, I am ahead. First blood went to me. In fact, you are lagging behind. If you don't start to take this seriously, you won't see what Rias was talking about." Sarorg was about to dash forward again, only to blink in shock as Naruto shot forward. Just before impact, Naruto rotated his body in the air, bringing his leg up to kick only to meet the back arm of Sarorg, strong and defiant. That is what he felt from the small clash. He paused for only a brief moment, though to the less skilled observer it looked like a single continued movement as he twisted his body around and snapped his neck out to the side as he passed. Sarorg found his head cracked to the side as a long spike was whipped against his cheek. It was strong and commanding. His hand shot out, grabbing onto the golden hair tightly and causing Naruto to freeze in the air before he was thrown over Sarorg's shoulder and into the ground, his body impacting with a solid crash as the ground below him split and cracked. Not giving him a chance to recover, Sarorg sprung forward, landing on top of the downed blonde only to see his lips stretch into a feral smirk and feel a solid impact in his gut. Looking down, he saw the cloth shoe of Naruto embedded into him deeply. The blonde twisted, landing another foot into his gut before bending his arms and slamming both heels into his chest, sending him flying through the air. Spreading his wings out behind himself, the raven-haired male stopped himself from falling further. He placed a hand down to his stomach. The muscles were protesting against continuing this fight, but Sarorg couldn't fight the smile on his face, someone he could trade blows with, plus he wasn't even getting serious yet. He watched as the blonde slowly floated up into the air. He lifted a hand out in front of him, showing his fingers to his opponent before black claws grew from his nails. With a swift move, his hand vanished and appeared again. Only this time it was holding the mass of hair he had used as a weapon previously. "I guess I won't be able to break through your hardened skin with such a light gimmick. I would say that you have my attention now, Sarorg Bale." The spoken about male gave a stern nod. "Good, I was wondering how long it was going to take to get it. If you cannot force me to get serious, I will become disappointed in you. I took my time to read up on you, the genius of hard work, that is what people are calling you." Naruto flexed his fingers lightly, his eyes narrowing on Sarorg. "I worked hard to get here. I'm not just living off of my family's abilities like some devils do." He grit his teeth lightly and clenched his fists tight, readying his stance. "If you think that I didn't work to get this strong, you're wrong. I'm just not interested in surpassing what I have already gained yet, though. I guess we are starting again. This talk is growing dull." Sarorg flinched as Naruto appeared in front of him. He blocked the punch and felt his bones creak under the pressure. From the corner of his eyes he saw the kick coming and moved into its path, grabbing it, and entering a rapid spin with his body only to feel another leg clamped shut around him. Seeing where this was going to lead to, he stopped his spin for a moment. Making careful adjustments, he was able to get Naruto into a lock with his head facing towards the ground. He entered the spin again and took them straight down, not giving Naruto a chance to fly again. Upon impact there was a sickening crack and Sarorg flinched. He let go of the blonde and moved back, watching as the body bent over, the head stuck beneath the ground. After a few moments he started to get worried, then he watched as one of the clawed hands moved, the body straightened and he pulled himself out with a one-handed handstand. His hair, now a brilliant white, his eyes gone was the pupil, now it was a shade of white that seemed to hold the slightest hint of purple within. He locked eyes with Sarorg. "Now you've done it." With a flick of his wrist he generated enough force to push his body high enough into the air to right himself with a flip and land softly on his feet. He rolled his shoulders forward and the GI that had been around his top fell apart, showing his bare chest. It was on this bare chest that Sarorg noticed something. There was a tattoo. It looked like a white-haired woman was wrapped up in thorns. The thorns slowly started to untangle themselves and the woman turned around, stretching her arms out wide and fading into the blonde's chest. It happened in an instant. The air changed. It was cold. Frost was forming at the soles of the blonde's shoes. His now white hair grew longer, down to the middle of his back. His fangs protruded slightly from behind his upper lip. His brows had become smaller and more delicate, along with the marks on his cheeks vanishing. His skin became paler, and he very much took on the appearance of a perfectly crafted porcelain doll. Naruto crossed his arms over his chest, his black nails strumming against his arm. A form that only the highest of vampires could reach with an amount of training that caused most to give up before they ever achieved it. Here he stood, looking at a child his own age doing what he had not expected. All the raven-haired boy could do was throw his head back and laugh. Wow. When you said you would get serious, I didn't think you meant like this. Damn, I can feel the strength rolling off you. So this is the demon that Rias talks about? It is, the voice came from behind him. It was calm, cold. Sarorg turned his head ever so slightly, seeing the white locks being blown by the wind. He spun and shot his fist out only to hit a wall made of iron. At least that was what it felt like. He looked down at his fist only to see the clawed hand on the once blonde holding it tightly. Naruto let go and took a small breath in before shooting his palm forward, stopping it short of actually striking, but the force behind the movement was enough to send the black-haired boy backwards several feet and knock the wind from him. Panting heavily, Sarorg looked up at Naruto. Damn, I feel like if I hold back anything now you'll kill me. Well, I haven't used this in a fight before as no one has ever pushed me like this, and it isn't perfect, but it is the last thing I have. He grit his teeth and clenched his fists tight, feeling the energy from inside of him shift, pushing out and covering his skin like a shell. Tuki, that is quite interesting, Naruto spoke evenly, taking a step forward only for his opponent to do the same. They vanished in a flicker before appearing to clash in the middle of the arena, fists striking against black claws. A large bubble of energy swirled around them, ripping up earth and sending it floating into the air as the ground below them continued to crack away under the pressure of the two fighters. Violet staring at pale white, white against black. Naruto closed his fingers closer together, forming the hand for the serpent style of combat. This only caused the ground to crack further as the aura continued to get bigger and bigger before it finally turned black and swallowed their forms. Those on the outside were sitting on the edge of their seats. To the Gremorys, it was the first time that they had seen someone of Naruto's age fight so well against him. To think that they were related to the contestant as well was only a boon. Sona Citri was gritting her teeth, unable to believe that Rias had been able to get her hands on a queen like that. The Bale family was beyond impressed at how well the trash was doing in an actual fight. If this continued, he would be able to challenge the current heir and win. That did not bode well. Grafia watched with a warm smile. She honestly would have been disappointed as well if Sarorg wasn't able to push Naruto at least this far. The blonde wouldn't have anyone his own age to call a rival, to force him to grow stronger so that he wouldn't lose. Now to see Sarorg push out an amount of energy that could rival Naruto's own, that had both surprised her and made her incredibly happy. Then it happened. The large black orb in the middle of the arena, the one containing Naruto and Sarorg, started to crack before it violently shattered, sending out an insane amount of wind that ripped up all the earth around them, forming a crater below the two combatants. In truth, the once pristine arena now looked like a bomb had hit it, just from the fighting of two youths. Sarorg was flung backwards as was Naruto as they both impacted the arena wall. Everyone watching was quiet. They didn't dare speak until Grafia made an announcement. The Silverette watched with a critical eye as Sarorg seemed to move, only for his body to fall out of the wall and land onto a tiny patch of ground below him. She turned her head to Naruto, seeing him start to fall only to hover instead. His body stayed like that for a few moments before he righted himself, his chest littered with cuts and bruises as his pants were in tatters now. His eyes scanned the arena for a moment, watching as Sarorg slowly made his way to his feet, stumbling around a little before putting his fist out and giving a wide smile. Next time I'll win, Naruto. He shouted with the last of his energy before he fell back over and was teleported to the infirmary. What do you mean next time, you bastard? You relied on your pure strength of will. I had to dip into my vampire powers. If anything, you won this one. Naruto grimaced lightly. His victory left a bad taste in his mouth. He didn't even wait for Grafia to call the match, instead turning into mist and appearing next to her. Tell Sarorg when he wakes up that if he loses to anyone else before I defeat him again, I will never forgive him. Why don't you tell him yourself? Grafia mused lightly. Naruto eyed her for a moment before giving a short laugh. I guess I'm not happy with that outcome, so I want to train. I understand, Grafia responded with an inwardly smile. The winner of the match was Naruto of the Gremory peerage. The people in the stands got up and cheered and clapped. Naruto honestly didn't care for them. He looked to Rias, who was waving at him nervously. Controlling his powers as best he could at the moment, he hovered over to her, crouching down in the air and coming to her eye level. Hello, Rias. Hello, Naruto, you look pretty like that, she stuttered out. Now Naruto had been called many things in his short life. Pretty was not one of them, and it took him by surprise. He blinked his eyes at her for a few moments before deciding to go along with her on this one. Okay, what about me do you find pretty? Your eyes, she answered without pause. His throat dried slightly when she said that. Swallowing, he nodded his head lightly before giving her a warm smile. Thank you, Rias. I got my eyes from my mother. I loved her very much. It was not a lie. The majority of his vampire abilities came from his mother. His father, while also a vampire, came from a different family and thus had different abilities. Sadly, he got the looks of his father when he was out of his combat form. Inside of it, though, his eyes became the same shade as Kagaya's. Rias smiled back at him, before moving forward and hugging him. I love her too. Without her I wouldn't have become your friend Naruto. The white-haired boy looked at Venelana, who had a kind smile on her face, while Lord Gremory gave a light chuckle. He slowly wrapped his arms around Rias protectively. Don't worry, Rias. I don't plan on going anywhere. A couple of weeks had passed since then. Naruto could be found in the training grounds, a large number of targets around him destroyed as he hovered in the air, his eyes closed as he lowered his leg back down to the ground. He hadn't fought against Serorg again yet, but he was waiting for it. It would come soon, and he could feel that the boy would be even stronger than before. A wide smile stretched across his face, only to turn kind as he heard the sound of familiar feet running towards him. He was in his slacks and dress shirt again. His shoes were the ones that Venelana had picked out for him. He turned his body to face the direction and saw Rias running down the stairs to the training ground. She had just turned 11 a few days ago. She was still wearing the bracelet he got her. It was simple, silver with some emeralds in it, just like her eyes. At least that is what drew him to it at first. He had placed a handful of protection spells inside the bracelet that would go off if Rias was ever in any danger that she couldn't handle. The young heiress waved her hand at him, causing him to reply with the same gesture. Hey Naruto, we're going to Japan. He rose a brow. Really? Didn't she had school or something she was meant to be attending? He pushed the thought away. Honestly, this was probably something she roped either her father or brother into. All she had to do was give them a pouty face or maybe even the puppy dog eyes if it was a bigger ask, and they caved instantly. Sounds like fun. When are we going? Tusama said we should go now so that Ka-chan doesn't find out. I don't understand why she would have a problem with it though. Really? Naruto thought. Could Rias really not see why Venelana would want her daughter to stay home and study rather than run around Japan? Damn, he knew he was going to lose a lot of money on this trip. Oh well, if it was to keep Rias happy he didn't really mind, either. He lied. Let's go, maybe we will see a giant robot or something? Don't be silly, Naruto. Everyone knows that mechs were wiped out by that musical magic girl. I must have missed that one, the blonde trailed. Rias nodded her head. Don't worry, I have it on Blu-ray so I can show you the battle. Honestly, Rias, I think I'm good. Her feet struck the ground as they ran faster than she thought her legs would be able to carry her. It was his fault she was like this. It was his dirty blood that ran through her veins and made everyone hate her. It was because of him that her mother was killed. Killed her. She died because of him. He killed her. She bit her lip, drawing her dirty blood as she continued to run. She could hear the adults behind her. How could they have found her so easily? Did someone talk about her to the temple? Get her. Don't let that thing escape. She continued to run. She could feel them getting closer. Her raven hair, which reminded her of her mother, was so dirty now. She pushed away a low-hanging branch that was in front of her, only to see a blonde-haired male standing not too far away. His eyes were closed, and what looked like a lollipop stick was hanging from his mouth. Rias was right. You do have worth. Will you become our friend Himejima Akino? He spoke in a voice that felt so comforting, yet she froze. How do you know my name? She stuttered out, watching as his eyes slowly opened and locked onto her own. Akino felt so small under that gaze. Rias has been watching you these past couple of days. She wants to know if you will join her peerage alongside me. If you accept, I will clear you of this mess. All you have to do is come stand beside me, he spoke calmly. Akino looked over her shoulder. The cries were getting closer. They would be upon her soon. Gritting her teeth, she looked at the blonde again, watching as he tilted his head to the side, as if he was curious about her choice. Shaking her head, she ran forward and stood by his side. In a swift movement, she felt something draped over her shoulders. It was a cloak, a traveling one that was incredibly warm. She looked up to the blonde and he turned his eyes away slightly. Your clothes are in tatters. It wouldn't work out well if I brought you back with a cold. You should do it up properly. Akino gave a small nod and fastened the clips on the front before looking back up at the blonde. It was snowing, lightly, but that was still the case, and here he was standing in a dress shirt and pants. I see, can't you would be cold. Don't worry about that, I don't feel the cold. He let his words trail off and Akino looked down at his feet. They weren't actually touching the ground. He could levitate? The crowd that had been chasing her broke through the bushes and paused as they saw Akino standing next to some random teen. You should move away from her, boy, an older male huffed. It was clear that he was still out of breath from all the running. Really, humans were so unfit compared to the supernatural. That thing shouldn't exist. Akino flinched at his words only to feel a soft hand on her shoulder. Akino has chosen to be a friend to myself and Rias Gremory. He saw the people flinch at that. Much more, she now stands in our territory. If you cross the line to try any hostile action, I will be given full rights to deal with you as I see fit. You bluff boy. Men keep going forward. The humans started to charge and Akino grabbed onto the arm of Naruto. The blonde though was looking into the trees slightly above him. Is it ready yet? Hi, a voice hissed out before a large array of thread appeared and wrapped the humans up in a brief second, large seals placed on each of their foreheads as a result. Akino watched in shock at how quickly they were taken care of, only for a shadow to appear over her. She looked up and nearly let out a shriek as what looked like a cross between a woman and a spider was lowering herself to the ground. Naruto rose a brow at the tied-up humans. Impressive, seems like you have been training again, Arachna. Thank you for that. The silver-haired woman with deep blue eyes bowed her head lightly as she reached the ground, her arms fidgeting under her web-covered breasts. To give a better idea, the lower half of the woman was a spider, abdomen included along with the 8 legs. Her top half was all human though. I would not be worthy of being your familiar if I could not clean up trash like this. Naruto beckoned for her to come closer, her long legs tapping softly on the ground as she did, pausing directly in front of him. He gently stroked her face and placed a kiss on her forehead. I know I am asking a lot of you, but do you think you could drop them off at their temple for me? I would rather not have to deal with the added reports that come with the loss of human life. Arachna nodded her head lightly before looking at Akino, who flinched and hid behind Naruto. Do not worry, child. I know not to attack those that my master has taken interest in. I must be gentle with them. Arachna turned on her feet and grabbed onto an amount of web in front of her. It was attached to each of the men that had been chasing Akino. After a while they were being dragged along by the spider woman. Akino watched in shock, slowly turning to face Naruto. Maybe I should have told her to take it easy on the humans, Naruto mused as he watched them get knocked together. Well, they deserve it. I thank you, but you shouldn't be seen with something like me, Akino trailed, looking down at the ground. Her feet had already grown so numb that she could no longer feel them properly. Mostly due to a mixture of the cold and the amount of running she had been doing lately. You mean about your fallen blood? Naruto questioned as if it was such a simple piece of information. How do you know that? She took a few steps back, balling her hands into fists in case she had to fight her way out. Naruto craned his head lightly to the side. I don't know if you have noticed yet, but I am not human myself. In fact, you are more human than I am. I can smell that you are a fallen angel, yet at the same time, you are also human. Akino looked down at her feet again. So you understand that we can't be friends. Dirty creatures like me don't deserve friends. I'm not going to ask you why you feel like that. You have your reasons, and if you want to talk about it, you will. But really? You think that your blood is dirty? That you as a product are dirty as well? Never knew my father. He was, or is, a vampire, that much I know. But my mother, she was a vampire queen. So tell me, Akino, what do you think is dirtier? A vampire prince, or a fallen angel? The young girl bit her lip. You don't seem evil though. That would be for 2 reasons. One, I am not in my combat form, which would bring out my vampire traits further, and secondly because I don't want to be evil. Rias thought you could use a hand and asked me to give you a choice. Oh yeah, Rias is a devil by the way. She is sweet though and pretty cute. Around your age, so you two would probably make good friends if you tried. Naruto gave a small wave of his hand before placing it down for Akino to take. So do you want to come with me, Akino? Shouldn't we wait for your spider? Arachna will travel back to her dimension when she is done. From there she will be able to appear at my side again. That is the power of a familiar. Akino looked at his hand for a few moments before slowly extending her own and placing the smaller appendage inside his larger one. Please look after me? She asked softly, her voice full of hope. Naruto gave her a warm smile. We will. Now this will feel a little strange, but I would rather not walk all the way back. As the words left his lips, Akino saw a thick mist roll in around them, swallowing the duo whole before clearing and leaving no one behind. Akino's feet never touched the ground as they appeared outside of a small home. It was still snowing, yet the reason she never touched the ground was because Naruto had lifted her off her feet to keep them from growing even colder. He strode forward and opened the door without pause, closing it just as quickly behind him. Naruto placed Akino down on the floor and looked her in the eyes for a handful of moments. You look like you could do with a nice warm bath. He turned around slightly and spotted a few strands of red hair poking out from past the door frame. Rias, this is Akino, the one you have been watching. She agreed to be our friend as long as we look after her. He gave a cheery smile which caused the young heiress to jump out from behind the frame and nod her head brightly. I am going to run her a bath to heat her up. Naruto turned to leave only to feel a hand grab tightly onto his shirt arm. He saw Akino looking at him. She was scared, no terrified, Don't leave me," she spoke weakly. Rias gave a light giggle at her words. "I will run a bath then, Naruto, if you could take Akino and try to dry her a bit while I do so?" The blonde rotated his arm and lightly grabbed onto Akino's own. "We have a fireplace in the next room. Come, it should dry your clothes a little." Rias watched as the two left, her brows furrowing slightly before she spun on her feet and headed up to the second story. It wasn't exactly a big house, to them anyway, it was like a small getaway. Once she reached the bathroom, she ran the water until it became hot, then she sat, waiting for the tub to fill. From down the stairs and on the other side of the house she could hear Akino laughing at something that Naruto had done or said. Really, she couldn't have asked for a better queen. He was kind, well to her and her friends anyway. He was smart, often helping her with her homework without so much as a simple question. Everything seemed so basic when he explained it to her, and it just made sense. Then there was his abilities. She didn't know his full backstory, and while it irked her that it was hidden, she understood that it was for her own safety that she didn't know, but what she did know was that he was different to other vampires. His ability to walk in daylight was a shining example, not to mention she had caught Grafia calling him a lord a handful of times. The room always became cold, very cold after that though. With the tub now full, she dried her hands, walking down the stairs to the main room, seeing Naruto drying Akino's hair with a towel as she sat in front of the fireplace, a conflicted look on her face. Their laughter and cheer now gone. In a way it made her feel better. That strange anger from before was gone. It was similar to the same kind she felt whenever Grafia said he had to go with her somewhere. She watched with a small amount of concern as Naruto turned around to face her, giving a small smile. "It looks like your bath is ready, Akino. Shall I prepare a meal for you both?" Rias was about to protest, thinking that he needn't make the effort, only to have her stomach barge in with its own opinion, a large rumble cutting her off as she looked down sheepishly. "I haven't had dinner yet, Naruto." She looked to Akino only to see a blush forming on the young girl's face and the fact that she could no longer look at Naruto, though continued to try to steal glances at him anyway. Naruto didn't seem bothered at all, giving a small smile as he looked towards the kitchen. "I will prepare something for you both then." He moved to the room in a near blur, signaling that they should probably move to the bath as well. It didn't take the two young girls long to figure that out, leaving Naruto alone with his thoughts. Honestly, he just followed what he had been taught by Grafia. According to Rias, his food tasted good, though he himself could not see how. Everything tasted like crap to him, bare of course the sweets Rias made him, and the ramen that Grafia made. Rias had learnt the sweets from Venelana, who in turn had been taught by Grafia, yet the ramen recipe was something that had not left the Silverette's hands. Apparently she had no real intention of passing it on to another either. His hands moved to the bench and he quickly went into autopilot, already knowing what he was making when he got there. Spinning on his feet, he moved to the fridge, pulling out some fish that they had brought earlier in the day, along with some eggs and rice. It was a simple dish, one that he would improve on with a small amount of spices. His hands moved like a blur as he removed the bones of the fish before filleting it. Grafia had drilled the action so far into his head that he believed he could do it blindfolded. With that now down, he put a light rub of spices on the fish before placing it in the fryer, placing the rice and water to boil. With that said, he could turn to the eggs to make a light dipping sauce to go with the dinner set. It didn't take long for him to smell the food approaching, the best time to pull it off the heat and set it onto the nearby bench. He paused and let the sound of feet coming down the steps filter into his ears. They had finished bathing, he guessed. He hadn't thought that it had taken him that long, or maybe Akino just did not feel like soaking long in the water. A moan drew his attention to the bench, where Rias sat there sniffing the food that had been prepared. "Your food always tastes so good, Naruto. It even smells great." The young redhead cheered. Beside her, Akino was looking at it with slightly wide eyes before noticing that there were only 2 plates. Her eyes sunk a little, thinking they were already going back on their promise. "It's for you, Akino. I am a vampire, so human food normally tastes up bad. I have blood packs in my room that I will have later on, so don't worry about me." He gave a light wave of his hand as he made himself a bitter cup of coffee. Sweet tasted awful for some reason. He couldn't figure why though. Maybe it was just the milk and sugar? Akino played around with the fish on her plate for a moment. Could someone who thought food tasted horrible actually make something that tasted good? She spared a glance to Rias. The cheerful girl seemed to be falling in love with every bite, pouting slightly when she finished her mouthful. Though that could be an act, she did after all seem rather attached to the blonde vampire. Maybe she didn't want him to think that his cooking was bad? With a small amount of hesitance, she reached forward with her chopsticks to cut the fish, finding it surprisingly easy. Picking up the small piece, she placed it in her mouth, preparing for the worst only to let out a gasp of shock. It was incredible. The fish nearly melted in her mouth, and the subtle spices seemed to give it a homely, yet at the same time upper-class feel about it. It spread through her mouth, quickly filing down her body and running all the way to her toes. The warmth and security that this dish seemed to make her feel was incredible. Here I stand, helpless and left for dead. Rias let out a groan while Akino looked around in surprise. Naruto though reached into his pocket and pulled out a flip phone, looking at the caller ID before grimacing lightly. I'll take this outside. He answered the call and left the room, leaving a very confused Akino and a slightly less so Rias. Upon reaching the slowly falling snow outside, he started to speak. Hello, Venelana-sama. Naruto, how many times must I tell you to stop being so formal with me? As many as it takes, I would assume. Though I doubt you called for such a small thing as to test whether I have learned my lesson in how to address you. Where are you currently? I thought you would be more interested in where Rias is? Everyone knows that she would have dragged you along with her. Also, Grafia says that you have missed some of her lessons. Naruto had to give her that. There was always a high chance that Rias was with him if she couldn't be found. Apparently he had been good at hiding from people, though they were staying within Gremory territory, so he assumed that Lord Gremory had somehow managed to either forget that they were there, or simply had not been told as such. Japan, inside Gremory territory. There is very little to worry about. He paused as the sound of wings fluttered into his ears. He stared for a moment, watching as large silhouettes blanketed the skies, his blue orbs narrowing at the sight. Because of the dark sky, he was unable to see what color the wings were, but he could tell they weren't in the shape of a bat. You will have to forgive me for cutting this short, Venelana, but it seems that some birds have found us. Birds? Her voice was frantic, and he was sure that he heard her hit the desk as she promptly stood up in shock on the other end of the line, though maybe that was just his imagination. Doves or ravens? It's a little dark here, so I can't tell. I would ask for aid, but it seems that help will not come in time. I will keep the girls safe as best I can. Just hurry. Wait, girls? As in Plu. The line went dead and Naruto broke himself apart into fog before forming in the kitchen again, shocking the two young girls from their meal, and Naruto. Don't just appear like that. Rias stuttered out, a faint twinge of red dusting her cheeks. He paused slightly, before looking around, holding his hand to the ground and drawing a small amount of blood. The blue substance touched the ground and a large circle appeared at his feet. Akino would later question just why and possibly how Naruto had blue blood, though apparently his mother had the same color. His explanation was simple really, he was just different to other vampires. Arachne came out from the circle, giving the girls a warm smile. Well, as warm as a spider woman possibly could. You should head to the basement, Rias. Take Akino with you and do not open it for anyone. Is something wrong? The young heiress had good reason to be worried. Her queen was strong and normally good at hiding what he really felt, well when he wanted to anyhow, yet here, she could hear a small amount of worry in his own voice. No, nothing, just go, you should listen to your elders, Rias. He narrowed his eyes at her, causing Rias to stiffen under the gaze, though she didn't even get to take a step before the entry door was blown off its hinges. She watched as Naruto spun on the spot, his hair turning long and white as his nails turned into claws. His feet were bare, meaning he had already prepared for them to arrive, at least somewhat. Either that, or he just really enjoyed walking around in bare feet. Heavy boots struck the hallway feet away from them before coming to a stop, just outside the door to the kitchen. The doorknob slowly turned only to be stopped by large dead thorny branches encompassing the handle and door, stretching out from the ground at Naruto's feet. Without looking behind him, he pushed the girls to be standing behind his back. Just as they finished moving into position, the door was blown off its hinges again. It seemed that the intruder had gotten tired of waiting. The door, though, had been cut down by large branches that had moved to protect the young trio before it got close enough to be cast as a threat. A figure walked through a small amount of smoke. His face was mostly covered, though he had bright green eyes. His skin was lightly tanned and the figure was clearly male. He was bulky and his clothes dark. Rias Gremory, come with me and no one else needs to be hurt. One of the branches came back to Naruto and danced over his tongue, letting a handful of drops of blood fall. The other male looked to his arm. There was a light sting there and a faint cut. The white-haired vampire rolled the blood around on his tongue for a moment before blinking a handful of times. Fallen angel, 6 wings, a strong affinity for the fire element along with light magic. Arachne, could you go watch over Rias and Akino for me? He spoke in a somewhat carefree tone. Arachne knew better than to question him. No doubt he had, or was placing an illusion over them so that she would be able to move them away. So before they could make any sound to throw off his plan, she wrapped their mouths in web and quickly carried them away on the back of her abdomen. The fallen angel, though, saw only one thing. The two girls that had been standing behind the blonde turned into thorn bushes as the spider ran from the room. He rose a brow at the action. Facing against people that used illusions was normally a pain. They hardly ever fought straight up and often spent their time running around in circles to confuse their opponent, a vampire devil with death magic. So this is where Kagaya's child ended up. Oh? Do you think that is some kind of achievement? If I was to use my magic outside of the private training I do, people would piece it together instantly. How dull of you, nevertheless, I cannot let you pass and I am in fact quite hungry. Naruto's fangs slipped out past his lips as large tendril-like branches continued to sprout from all directions. The fallen though gave a wicked smirk. This isn't the first time we have met, boy. I don't remember your scent nor your blood, so it is quite clear that you weren't enough to pique my interest last time. Maybe that has changed now. The branches moved forward faster than most would be able to see, only to jar and burn against the shield of flame that appeared in front of the fallen. Of course you wouldn't. After all, the last time you never saw me, so I guess that I said that wrong. This is not the first time I have seen you. After all, someone had to give them the information on your mother. Frost appeared in an instant through the room, the flame shield dwindling under the heavy moisture in the air. Ah, it seems that I have your attention now, Naruto Carmilla, child of Kaguya Carmilla, the lord that drained Draco. Naruto's lips were pressed into a thin line as his eyes glared at the man in front of him. He was not impressed. He slowly lifted his right hand into the air, pointing his index and middle finger at the man. I have no reason to hold back my abilities then, Bramble, he called as the thorns quickly moved to surround the fallen. The still unnamed man gave a small scoff and erected a wall of flames around him, only to watch thorn branches made of ice to punch through his defenses. He spread his wings wide and shot out of the flames towards where Naruto was, only for a large black orb to be in his place. It quickly compressed before shooting out as a powerful beam, launching him through the house and bringing down a large portion of it. Naruto had of course used a large orb to shield himself, having predicted that to be the most likely course of action from the given options. His face was holding no small amount of disdain on it for the fallen as small bones protruded from his forehead, barely even 2 inches in length, yet he could still feel the power that they were pushing into him. He didn't get to revel in it for long though, as a large barrage of spears, made from light and fire, flew towards him. He would have to give up on his eyesight to be able to stretch his other senses out far enough to find where Rias and the others were, at least he hoped so, giving him little option but to come up with a way to stop what was coming towards him. Bramble, Wonderland. With his words he stretched his hands out wide before drawing them up and towards the spears. The snow from the sky, which had started falling ever so lightly earlier in the day, grew dense and heavy before turning into ice and forming a large tunnel that his thorns crawled along, covering it in more and more ice, making it denser and denser before finally forming a large cylinder to contain the spears and their explosions. He did not stop at one layer, constantly building it up and compacting it before he sealed them all, and with a mighty movement of his own body he launched it at the fallen, who was watching with wide eyes. Regaining himself, the fallen spun to the side and summoned a flaming sword in his hand before dragging it down the length of the icy rocket, splitting and eventually melting the large pillar. He landed on the ground and his hood fell away, showing long braided dirty brown hair. His face was that of a male, late 20s maybe early 30s, it had a handful of scars, along with burn markings on the left cheek. 3 of his braids, though if asked later Naruto would call them dreadlocks, the ones which hung over the band wrapped around his forehead and sat on his face, had a strange golden casing on them. I haven't had to draw my sword since the Great War. I wonder how they managed to bring down your mother if you are already this strong? He scratched at his chin lightly while he looked around at the somewhat clearing that had been formed. Trees had been uprooted, now replaced with thick rose bushes, all containing the signature black rose of the Carmilla family. Trandiel, formerly a young apprentice under the teaching of Uriel, a voice stretched out from around him, from the roses that blanketed his vision. I am still trying to sift through everything, not to mention I only had a very, very little bit to drink, so it is somewhat fuzzy. There was a click of someone's fingers as large thick branches shot out. The now known Trandiel inwardly sighed at such a move, narrowly stepping between each branch only to see a strange piece of paper on one, faintly sizzling as it approached a strange symbol. He heard another click and found that his world was covered in an explosion. He didn't know how, yet it happened. He was resistant to fire, highly freaking resistant, like bathe in the stuff kinda deal, but the force behind the explosion was enough to send him flying back through the thorn branches. It was like suffering from hundreds of paper cuts at once, only a little bigger and much more painful. Picking himself up from his position in the bushes on the edge of the clearing, he let out a tired sigh. The little brat was good. He was now thankful that the vampires never got involved in the faction war. There would have been a lot more deaths if they had a handful of people like this. Hell, he had killed his fair share and then some, but he wasn't going to let some little brat push him around. You should be feeling it about now, Naruto spoke again from hiding, his voice echoing around the empty clearing. Definitely should, that numb feeling starting in your toes. No, it isn't your imagination. No, it is in fact a poison that is native to spiders and vampires alike. You see, we share incredibly similar methods of hunting. We like to lure and taunt our prey, luring them into a trap before sinking our teeth in and stunning them, allowing us to eat them from the inside out. I first struck you at the very start. When I saw you walk in, you might remember that though the poison only seemed to slow you down slightly, you didn't even seem to notice it really, so it might have done nothing at all. Yet there, Just when you decided to try dodging instead of blocking, you sealed your fate. Naruto slowly faded in, appearing in front of Trandio with his head tilted slightly to the side. You must be pretty angry. I mean, picture your fallen buddies wondering how you died to some kid thousands of years younger than you. His fingers twitched and he summoned up a large dead plant, with what appeared to be a needle on the front, positioning it next to Trandio. I cut you with enough thorns to bring down an 8 or 10 winged angel. That is if the calculations are correct. The heir of Carmilla crossed his arms over his chest and narrowed his gaze at the fallen in front of him, watching as large bramble bushes rose up and caught him, pinning the man up on a cross that they made as his needle plant moved into position, hovering just over the heart. I have no intention of feeding from you, though I will be drinking your blood. Your secrets, they will become mine. He lifted up his index finger and watched a tiny flame come to life on the tip. I will take your fire and let my plants and body mutate it into something useful. It would have taken me much longer to find the truth about my mother if you hadn't have told me. I may not have even fought you with my all, but it is clear that you are not worth the amount of wings you have. The needle plunged deep into the fallen's chest. Trandio widened his eyes slightly, but no sound was able to escape from his mouth as his muscles had already gone limp. His heart, now only beating because of the needle in his chest. This must be painful, yet you can't even scream. I wonder what is going through your mind. It really doesn't matter. I will find it out once this process is done, though I believe I am being too nice. After all, my mother did nothing, yet look at what happened to her. Naruto frowned. It wasn't enough. He saw flashes of his mother's corpse up in a similar position and gave a small growl, lifting his hand up into the air and snapping his fingers again, watching as black bamboo started to grow from the ground, shooting up like spear raising to the heavens, piercing and tearing through the fallen's body with no pause or remorse. He was using his flowers to keep the creature alive, yet unable to respond to anything. A large pressure was building in his head, and he felt the bony protrusions on his forehead grow slightly more, though he wasn't in the mood or frame of mind to question it properly. Not enough, it still isn't enough. Another plant came up from the ground and started to move towards the man's rear. It would enter on his mental command and tear him apart from the inside out. He brought his fingers together. The snap of his fingers was the command for the plants to do as he told them, though before he could snap them he felt a chilly hand grab onto his wrist. He snapped his head around and saw Rias standing there, a concerned expression on her face. Standing not too far behind her was Vanillana, her hands raised and covering her mouth as she stared with wide eyes at the scene in front of her. Before either of them could question him, the plant he had been using to drain the blood of Trandio bloomed, letting out orange-colored petals that slowly started to shrivel up. Sorry about that, Naruto spoke, forcing a smile onto his face. It would appear that this raven played a hand in my mother's death. He trailed off as the scent of arachna entered his nose. It would seem that Rias and our new friend is back. He shifted his gaze to the man still pinned up on the cross before snapping his fingers and letting thorns cover him completely. For your acts against the Carmilla Coven, I shall have you be devoured slowly by my plants over the next few years. Your death will not be so easy. There was a slight flicker of his eyes before the thorns covered them and wrapped tightly, just as the girls came into view. Though it really did little to mask the 6 giant black feathered wings that were sprouting out from the large cross, or the fact that horns were sprouting from the forehead of Naruto, though no one had seemed to pick up on that yet. Why are you cosplaying as a devil, Naruto? I thought you were fighting someone? Thank you ever so much, Rias. Now he felt all eyes on his person, or more specifically the protrusions on his skull. From the slightly interested look on Graphia's face, he had no doubts the maid wanted to tug on them to make sure they were real. I lost my temper and they continued to grow. I feel like I am on a different level than before. You have the reserves of a high-class devil currently, Graphia informed him stoically. This, along with the information that you have defeated a lieutenant-level fallen, should be enough to qualify you for your exams this year, Naruto. Naruto craned his neck to the side. Mid-class he trailed before seeing the intense eyes of Akino staring him down. What you saw earlier, I guess you could call that my resting state, Akino. This is what I really am, quite evil, wouldn't you say? Akino fumbled her with her hands, and seemingly her words as well for a couple of moments before managing to get enough control to speak. I think that without the horns you would be very handsome. Vanillana's face changed. No longer was she staring at the now covered fallen. Her eyes were focused on the 2 young girls. Era, is my adoptive son trying to swoon all of the young girls he knows? I don't believe you ever formally adopted me, Vanillana, though in saying that, I also don't hold that intention. He brought a hand up to his temple and rubbed it lightly, his hair growing shorter and turning back to its golden blonde. The horns that had sprouted from his head seemed to be shaven off by the wind, down to small stumps that rested just beneath the surface of his skin. Not visible to the eye, yet he could still feel them there. Oh, Kasan? Rias exclaimed loudly in shock, clearly understanding what her mother was saying. Akino, on the other hand, gave a small chuckle and raised her hand in a very ladylike demeanor. Era, I could never do something so shameless to my new friends Venelana-sama. Grafia observed Naruto's reaction. It was something so small that it may not have been picked up by anyone else, simply because Rias was too young, which also ruled out Akino, also coupled with the fact that she spent quite a large amount of time with the young vampire. That is why she could see his pupils dilate ever so slightly, along with his iris dulling a few fractions as he gave a warm smile to cover up the fact that there was someone else who seemed to share in the strange ways of Venelana. May heaven itself have mercy on their souls. A month had passed since that day. In that time, Akino had grown closer to both Rias and Naruto. The latter had also found that because of the amount of light inside of Trandiel's blood was too high to be safely consumed by Naruto, sometimes he regretted being turned into a devil. If he was still a pure vampire it would not matter. Yes, it would hurt for a while, but he would be able to grow past it. Now though, the amount of light would surely kill him. He would have to use some sort of organic living object to contain the blood to actually use it as a source and have it come back. At the current time, Grafia was watching him like a hawk. It was after all the order of Venelana, the lady of Gremory, having seen a darker side to Naruto, wanted him to be watched, as a just in case. At this point, Grafia was ready to say that there was nothing wrong with the boy, he just was a little bit, read a lot, more cruel to his opponent this time around. It was understandable. As far as Grafia was concerned, she had heard the full story from Naruto, who had apparently been able to read the memories of the Fallen by drinking his blood. He had ingested more since his fight with the Fallen, and it had made him incredibly sick, which led to Ajuka Beelzebub being called. Of course, watching Naruto grit his teeth and fight through the pain to try to kill Ajuka was both interesting and concerning. It was here where she learned the truth. Apparently the old Mao, Beelzebub, Asmodeus and Leviathan along with a few others, had been the one to kill Kaguya, his mother. Though all he had were their family names, not the fact that they were from the old faction, which was why such a mistake happened. It had also taken part in his garnering of the attention of Seraphal Leviathan. Grafia inwardly shivered. She was not sure that was a good thing. Now though she was watching him as he retrieved his scores for the exam. It was strange how they were posting them on a large wall for all to see, almost like they were some kind of school. She saw something gather Naruto's attention and shifted her vision across to see what could have done so, only to see a strange cat girl crouch down on the balls of her feet, her legs spread apart in an unladylike manner, somehow though her kimono seemed to be covering her privates, well, at least from the angle that she was at. It wasn't spying, so to say, more like it was direct observation without Naruto's permission. There was a large possibility that he knew he was being watched. Along with the fact that it was Grafia doing it, he more than likely understood the reason it was happening as well. She saw Naruto approach her and thought that he deserved at least this much privacy. Thus she turned her head to the scoreboard to search for his name, a very faint smirk appearing on her lips, to be expected of you, Naruto. Naruto had his hands in his pockets, and a somewhat bored expression on his face. There was no longer any real excitement in this for him. Someone had walked by him questioning who Naruto was because he got a perfect score that no one else could. Thus there really wasn't any reason for him to be here. He could smell Grafia, meaning that she was watching him again. He wasn't broken, at least he didn't believe himself to be. Trandiel had been a cause of his mother's death. He would do the same to anyone that dared to hurt the Gremorys. A scent passed by him. One that he knew. Turning his head slowly in the direction, he saw Kuroka, a pout on her face as she glared at the board. Without making a sound, he walked over and hovered beside the girl, watching her rock back and forth as she seemingly searched for her name. You tied for second, by the way, Naruto commented offhandedly. Bah! Why did you have to take all the fun out of it, Naya? She turned her head around to the voice and froze when she saw his profile. Why did you have to be looking at the bottom, Kuroka? Do you doubt yourself that much? She inwardly flinched at his words, looking down at the ground in front of her for a few moments. I don't think that I am as good as you believe me to be, Naya. The grass next to her crunched lightly as Naruto took a step to move in front of her, crouching down and looking her in the eyes. So you know what I am thinking, do you? Ah, well, no. I didn't mean it like that, Naya. She tried to cast her head downwards only to feel his nail poking under her chin, forcing her to look into his eyes, those blue eyes that seemed to cast away all negative thoughts. Your heart is racing. I wonder if it is because you're scared of me, or maybe you are just nervous and unsure of us being this close to one another? He leaned forward slightly and gave her a toothy smile, seeing her flinch from the sight of his pearly whites. Oh. Do you want me to bite you again? Aye. A light chuckle left the lips of Naruto. You are so easy to tease, Kuroka, though in all seriousness, you are the first person I have drunk from directly. You should feel quite honored by that. But why, Naya? The blonde tilted his head to the side as if he were thinking on how to answer properly. You're interesting. But not entirely interesting, Naya? He gave a light chuckle, It seemed like she had paid quite a bit of attention to his words last time. You're different from others, not just because you are a part of the Nikomata race either. There is something about you that I find myself drawn to. If I understood better, I may be able to give you a better answer, though for now all I can say is that I find you interesting, someone I want to watch and see what becomes of them. Much like my king. Kuroka swallowed the lump in her throat. The scent of the man in front of her was intoxicating. She felt like she needed to be closer to him. I believe that Drackle is still alive. Sorry? She questioned, blinking rapidly. Where the hell had that come from? Drackle, I do not believe that he was killed, just drained of his power so that he wasn't a threat anymore. He gave her a wide smile. He is an ancestor of sorts, so I think it is best to believe that he is still alive. Then again, can someone like him truly die? After all, his legend still lives on. People still talk about him in hushed whispers, almost like he is still alive without anyone confirming it. I guess what I am trying to say is, when does someone die, Kuroka? That was a question, one she didn't have the answer for. His fingers slowly left her chin, allowing her to look down slightly in thought. Her supple little lips formed into a pout. She watched as Naruto slowly stood back up, tilting his head to the side lightly as he gave her a cheeky smile. What score did you get, Naya? He turned on his feet and gave a small shrug of his shoulders. You'll be able to find it pretty easily. As those words left his mouth, he broke apart into bats and flew off, causing quite a stir among the students, thinking they were under attack by a vampire. Kuroka turned her head to the board. As she came in second. Okay, apparently she tied with someone called Yubalina. What kind of name was that? Shaking that thought aside, she narrowed her eyes on the name at the top of the board. That had to be him. First Naruto, vassal of Gremory. Score, 100%. A smile worked its way over her face. He truly was something else. He beat her by 15%. Then again, he can't score any higher than full marks. It seemed she still had ways to go before she could be at his level. She would have to increase her training. Rias was pouting. That act in itself was common, so common that Naruto had called her the pouting princess more than a handful of times. This had led to him receiving a tantrum from time to time. There were just times that Rias brought it upon herself, though. This time she was pouting for another silly reason. As Akino was a newly reincarnated devil, she had to undergo training. This meant that Naruto was now the one training her, or as Rias saw it, Akino was taking up her Naruto time. It was a special time that she had named. It was the point in time where both she and Naruto were finished with their lessons for the day. Though this time was becoming less and less of late, this was due to Naruto's new promotion. Her brother, the Mao Lucifer, could now issue missions as such to the blonde vampire. Naruto of course did them without any care, saying it was simply a good way to test his abilities along with helping out the Gremory house at the same time. It had, though, led to a large reduce in the so-named Naruto time, but Rias was now in one of the better positions as her peerage already had a high completion of requests for her age, even some that were incredibly dangerous for a young devil to undertake. Normally his tutoring of Akino was acceptable, though that was due to the fact that Akino was fine with her giving small pointers here and there, as Rias was currently more advanced than her. Today was different, very, very different. Seraphal Leviathan. The name that when spoken about causes grown men to change into a new pair of pants. That lustful, bubbly, cute, young-looking devil was instructing Akino along with Naruto. Though Rias was not sure how much she was actually contributing, mostly because she would find it incredibly difficult to teach someone while you were receiving a piggyback. But when this point was brought up, it was quickly dismissed. Apparently the Mao Leviathan could not think properly if she was standing, a lame excuse and one that had many, many flaws, but apparently it was what she was staying with. Naruto had, in a sense, completely forgotten about the Mao riding on his shoulders. He had no idea why she even came in the first place. But then again, he had never tried to understand the bubbly Mao. Akino had her hand stretched out in the position instructed and was nervously looking at Naruto, who was circling the young girl like a piece of meat, though in this sense, seeing as she was a devil, he should technically be able to drink from her, meaning that to him, she was a source of nutrition, but that was getting technical. He didn't think like that most of the time anyway. What? A vampire needs to eat as well, you know. Naruto stepped forward and Akino found it difficult to hold her arm in the position with him so close, yet she pushed through, feeling his hands lightly skim just above the surface of her skin, trailing out from her heart to the tips of her fingers. Magic comes from the heart. The magic you will be learning flows out through your fingers, whereas mine goes down through my legs and into the ground below me. My fingers merely a command signal. From my heart? She questioned lightly, looking down at the mentioned object only for Naruto to poke it lightly, for him anyway. To her it was enough to make her wince, and not just because she was starting to develop in that area. It is the purest and most unchanging expression of what we are. Naruto gave his fingers a light click and giant branches came up and pulled Seraphal from his shoulders, Okay, maybe he hadn't quite forgotten about her. The small mouth pouted cutely, though she was thankful that there weren't any thorns. At the place where Naruto's feet touched the ground, black roses started to form and slowly spread out, littering the ground. Creatures that contract vampirism become undead. Vampirism can be injected via a highborn vampire. It is in the most basic of senses a disease. It kills the body and pushes dark magic into the blood to keep it moving. The difference between a turned vampire and a zombie is very slim. For what we call highborn vampires, or that is to say vampires born from a set of vampire parents, spend a large amount of time in the womb before we are born. Our mothers have to consume a large amount of blood to keep both us and themselves alive. He paused, making sure she was still following. After all, while it seemed somewhat out of place right now, he did have a reason for bringing this up. When Akino nodded, as if to say she was ready for him to continue, he did just that. For the period we are in the womb, we learn through the senses of our mother. We feel what they do, we taste what they do, we see as they see and hear what they hear, we become one. A female vampire is the most important part of vampire culture because of this. It is also from them that we receive our magic and abilities. In the end, all the male contributes to is leaving his seed. Most tend to just leave after that anyway. Though that is a conversation that we don't need to go into now. We both have father issues, Akino. I am not going to sugarcoat that. But unlike me, a large majority of your strength comes from yours. You have a very strong affinity for lightning-based magic. With your nature you could add light to that and become a force to be feared. The raven-haired young girl glared at Naruto, her teeth gritting inside of her mouth as lightning started to spark around her hand. Just before she could shoot it off, Naruto wrapped his hands over her outstretched arm, taking the large voltage into his own body. There we go, he breathed out, his hair now standing out on its ends, more than usual anyway. In fact, he could hear electricity arcing between his hair even now, not to mention the tips seemed to be seared by the heat. The fastest way to draw out someone's magic is to put them into an emotional state. I am in a way sorry for what I said, but the best way to use your magic is to feel it first. He stepped back and gave a wide smile, Akino slowly connecting the dots. Why, you learnt your magic while you were still in the womb? She questioned hesitantly. She felt a small tap on her nose. Bingo, we feel everything our mothers do, we learn everything they do in our period together, because when we come out of the womb, we are incredibly weak, we need every advantage that we can get. He waved his hand lightly and clicked his fingers, telling the branches to bring Seraphol back to the ground. Akino looked at him in shock. That was a very interesting way to increase survival odds for children, and it made her realize something. She had at least had her father around when she was younger. She may not be able to forgive him for what he did. Her mother was dead because of that man, yet Naruto, all he had was his mother, and she was gone. From what she knew now, the bond between a female vampire and her child was greater than most regular maternal bonds. She met his gaze only now, seeing how fake his smile was. It was so clear that she can't believe she had missed it before. Without pause, she ran forward and wrapped her arms around his waist. His shoulders were still a little too high for her to reach well right now. She didn't say anything, just leaned into him and held him tightly, blinking away the emotions that tried to spill from her eyes. One of his arms wrapped over her shoulders while the other lightly rested on her head. Geez, are you coming on to me, Akino? No offense, but you are a little young for me right now, maybe in a fey. Baka, she whispered out, a smile threatening to split her face. How did he do that? Just ease away her worries with a handful of words. She nodded her head and backed away, a smile on her face as she blinked away at the few tears that spilled from her eyes. Thank you for helping me. No worries. Now if you will excuse me, I need to talk to Rias before she tried to kill us all with a glare. His words only caused Akino to laugh harder. Really, he would always do something like that. When things became too emotional, he would find a way to defuse them. The raven-haired girl looked over to Rias. The young woman was glaring heatedly at her. She could understand why. Rias had firmly stated that Naruto was her queen and they needed to stay together at all times, though it was also clear that she was developing a major crush on her queen. She watched as Naruto walked up to Rias. He crouched down and spoke to her for a while, about what she didn't know, though Rias seemed to forget her frustration almost instantly, and now wore a large smile, while rapidly nodding her head in agreement. They continued to talk for a little while until Rias broke away and started to run over to her, a wide smile on her face before stopping still a fair distance apart before cupping her mouth. Naruto said Grafia-san was going to teach us to bake this afternoon. Do you want to join in, Akino? There was a flash of silver next to Naruto as the woman in question appeared. The blonde gave a small smirk as she stepped forward to scold him. Seraphol seems to have something to say to me with a Mao around. You shouldn't need to worry about spying on me, should you? Naruto-san, she quickly corrected herself at seeing his eyes twitch in irritation. Please do understand that we are doing such for your health. Venelana wants to make sure I am not dangerous. He placed a hand on his hip, the other going into his pant pocket as he slouched slightly. If I think that I am becoming a danger to the Gremory family, I will let you know, Grafia, then you can solve the problem permanently. Her stoic gaze widened in shock. Yes, he was mature for his age, but she did not expect a response like that, so clear-cut and cold. Naruto. Teach the girls to bake if you could, they are terrible at it, though their hearts are in the right place. You can't even taste their cooking. Grafia felt like deadpanning, though it would have been too out of character for her. Yeah, but when they try to offer me burnt biscuits, well, even I can tell that they aren't meant to look like that. I mean, I still eat it out of kindness, I guess, but they are really, really dry and hard. He lightly rubbed at the back of his head, putting on a smile. Grafia nodded her head lightly and walked away to where the girls were. As she did, Seraphol appeared beside him, her eyes big and sparkling. So, how did you know that I wanted to talk to you? She questioned, nearly forcibly cute. Your expression changed, ever so slightly, when I told you I would need to be teaching Akino to unlock her magic. If it wasn't important, you wouldn't have hung around, Naruto reasoned, giving a small shrug of his shoulders. In all honesty, he respected Seraphol, when she was actually being mature. When she was being a magical girl? Not a chance in hell was that happening. Mui, you shouldn't watch me so intently, Rias-tan would get jealous. Naruto took a moment of his time, not that he was really doing anything at the current second anyway, to ponder something. It had been plaguing him since he first met Seraphol, and now he would ask the question, internally of course, the simple question of, were the stars that floated around her when she spoke and the love heart outlines she made with her fingers that kinda looked like a beam, were they just a product of his imagination, or was she actually using her magic to produce those things on the regular as they were needed? If so, he had to give her credit where it was due, though slightly disturbing that a devil 200 plus years old was doing it. It was still impressive if she was doing it on purpose constantly. In the end, he decided to call it the Seraphol effect, the purpose of making something difficult when it had no reason to be. Because he wouldn't dare ask a Mao if she was actually childish enough to blow love hearts and wink stars. No, he wouldn't reduce himself to that, no matter how curious he became. Now his hand had a slight twitch inside of his pocket. He really wanted to know. What did you want to talk about, Seraphol? Mo, call me Sarah-chan or Levi-tan. Naruto gave her a single blink at that request. Would you prefer I call you Leviathan-sama? He watched the girl wince, like she had been struck over the head by the paper fan of death. He understood the feeling well and could relate to her. She then turned back to him, her bottom lip quivering lightly as she pulled her puppy dog's eyes. Sadly, it was a technique that had little effect on him apart from Rias. It was really hard to say no to her for some reason. Maybe it was because she was just too adorable in her young age. Can we go back to Seraphol? Good, we have reached an understanding. Now I believe you had a question? Her previous mood was gone now, and she took on a somewhat serious disposition. Children have started going missing from the following countries: Hungary, Ukraine, Moldova, Serbia, Slovakia and Bulgaria. I was wondering if vampires were involved? Naruto mused. Judging by the small frown on her face, he was right. How many have gone missing so far? Nearly 100. Normally this wouldn't even come as a problem to us, but it seems to be getting worse and worse. A few of the families that were affected had contracts with high-ranking devils. In other words, the ones giving the devils their power were now being targeted, or maybe it was by accident. Either way, it seemed to be something worthy of their attention. Naruto pursed his lips slightly. What is the period of time since the first abduction? January this year. That gave him the information he needed to start. I can safely say that it isn't vampires. At best only a handful, maybe 3 or 5 at the most, go missing to vampires in Europe. Those that are often taken become friends or vassals to high-class vampire children. In short, other than using them as temporary friends, vampires have no need for children. Their small bodies cannot sate our thirst on a safe level. We would kill too many children if we took them for feeding. That would mean that we have to fake their deaths. As opposed to taking an adult hostage where we can drain their blood every month or so at a safe level to keep a vampire healthy, or as close to healthy as possible. Though it is normally 2 humans for each vampire. I see. Well, it is good that it isn't the work of vampires. That would make relationships strained. Seraphol spoke with a cheery smile. Naruto though gave a small nod and stretched his back out a little. That is a fight that would only serve to push devils closer to extinction. You don't think that we would win? The young-looking Mao questioned with no small amount of confusion. Aren't they fighting against each other already? She was in a sense correct. Yes, the Teeps and Carmilla faction are fighting, though it is a fight between the Teeps and Carmilla faction. If anyone tries to get involved, all fangs will be bared at the intruder, not to mention it will draw out the military forces that are laying back and training while this civil war is happening. The vampires have a military group? Naruto craned his neck in slight confusion. I guess it would make sense that you didn't know, seeing as they haven't made mention of themselves for over 200 years. But there are 2, the Dead Guard. They take care of vampire royalty and directly serve them. As there is no true ruler for vampires at the current time, they have no one to follow, so they are bolstering their numbers and improving their training. The second group is the People's Army, though they act mostly as a buffer between the two factions at the moment, stopping a full-blown war from breaking out. This is called Rose Guard. When I was growing up with Mother, there was whispers of a group, though I don't know if they exist or not. Night Children, apparently they are like a shadow that keeps vampires safe. I would say that if they exist, that they are your biggest issue if you are going to war. Why? Because the rumor of their existence sprung up around the time of Christ. If no one has been able to confirm that they are real or not, they must really know what they are doing. I mean, sure, humans don't know about us, well, not fully, but for even vampires to not know about a vampire group? Don't you think that is a little odd? He gave her a questioning look. It seemed as though she was actually holding worth to his words. Seraphal nodded her head slowly. Okay, is there anything else you can tell me? One thing I heard, or more like felt. Naruto rubbed at the back of his head as he spoke. O blessed Mother of Night, spread your wings far and wide, shelter my dear child through sorrow and through pain. O blessed Night Mother, the Carmilla still serve thy. My mother said that, during my incubation, the moon was dark that night, and I felt something strange touch my chest. He unbuttoned his shirt and showed the tattoo that was present. I was born with this mark. My mother was entranced by it. The young Mao leaned forward, looking at the woman only to see it stare back at her, black orbs piercing through her pink ones. Horns slowly spread as large wings made of bone spread out from her shoulders. Her fangs grew longer, poking out from below her lips as her nails turned as black as night. Seraphal stepped back and the tattoo returned to normal. She looked up at Naruto, who was giving her a questioning look. Are you okay, Seraphal? He didn't feel it? If that was the case, then it was both impressive and scary. Or maybe it never happened and she just believed it did. Should she ask him? How would he react to her if she asked about a tattoo that he didn't seem to know much about, was able to start glaring at people? No, that would make her seem crazy, right? Seraphal? The bubbly Mao shook her head lightly to get the thoughts away. Naruto was buttoning up his top and didn't seem to understand what had happened. I am going to look into this matter and see if I can find anything. If it isn't confidential, could you let me know? It seems somewhat interesting. But not entirely, right? She teased a little, watching his upper lip twitch ever so slightly with her words. Indeed, a small sigh left his lips as he looked towards the castle. I should be going. If those two have decided to gang up on Graphia, I doubt the poor woman would last long. With that, he lifted his hand lightly and stated to vanish in fog. Seraphal didn't bother calling him, already know that what she was seeing was basically an after image shown via the water molecules in the fog. Though Naruto had given her quite a bit to think about with his words. It would seem that the vampires weren't as dead as she had thought them to be. That was good, very good. The vampires could be a powerful ally to the devils if they could bring up something to the table to talk about. Her mind drifted to Naruto for a moment. It was possible that he could be used to bring the Carmilla faction to the table. Of course she knew about his mother. That was a subject that caused a large amount of trouble when he was first brought to the Underworld by Vanillana. Though the vampires seem to believe that he is dead. In saying that, it could also backfire greatly. The vampires may question why they have kept him hidden for so long, in which case they had no excuse. Her lips pursed. She would try to strike a deal with the vampires without mentioning Naruto's name, only subtly leading her words towards him during the face-to-face meeting to gauge their reactions. Though with vampires that could be hard, they were really good at controlling their emotions, or just feeling like everything was a bother so nothing really mattered to them. Night Mother, she mumbled. It seemed like some kind of deity that Kagaya Carmilla prayed to in order for her to bless Naruto. She would have to do as much research as she could on this person, but for now, she wondered what Sonatan was up to. Akino had realized something since Naruto had made it his job to train her. She didn't like him all that much. No, that was wrong. She wasn't his biggest fan. Well, that was impossible. She wasn't Rias after all. No, his training was inhumane. Then again, she was now pretty far from being a human. In a sense at least, she was part devil and part fallen angel now. Though she had come to notice that they were never alone, one of Lucifer-sama's peerage was always watching them. She had of course at first thought it was because of her dirty blood, though she noticed that it wasn't her they were watching. Eyes were constantly on Naruto. They were weary of the blonde vampire. Akino was not daft. She could at least understand that Naruto was different. Apparently he scored much higher than most in the class progression exam. She had seen what he did to the fallen angel that had attacked them in the human world. His body had arrived a few weeks ago. She struggled to hold her breakfast that morning, yet Naruto did not seem bothered at all, like it was just a speck of dirt that had landed on his shoe. Sadly, she hadn't even been able to do that during their training. Naruto stood across from her, not even the dust in the air threatening to go near him. She looked to her side, her partner in so-called crime, Rias Gremory stood there, dirt and grime covering her, along with a thick layer of sweat as she continued to pant, somewhat like an animal. Akino herself was not in a better shape. She blew at a few strands of hair that were on her face, only for them to fall back down and stick to her sweaty cheek. Her eyes narrowed and she glared at Naruto. He looked like he had just come out of a shower. He slowly rose a hand and combed it through his golden locks, ignoring the looks he was receiving with what seemed to be a trained grace. Not bad, your timing is off, though. He was cut off as he dodged a bolt of lightning that split the ground at his feet, his blue orbs meeting the pink ones of Akino as his face slowly stretched into a grin. Against a stronger opponent you should not try to hit them with the first strike. He dipped his head down and shot his hand up, grabbing the wrist of Rias, who had moved around behind him, and pulled her over him using her already forward momentum to reduce the energy it took. Rias crashed into the ground, her fist, which was lightly covered in her power of destruction, doing as its name entrails to the ground, leaving a nice fist-size hole that was perfectly cut out of the hard ground. Her power faded and she found her fist stuck in the ground. No matter how hard she pulled, it wouldn't budge. Akino would be better suited for the sneak attack. She is faster and more agile. Rias, you make too much noise as you move. He twitched his head to the side and dodged another bolt of lightning before turning into a swarm of bats and flying forward, shocking Akino, only for her to freeze as a nail-like claw was placed against her throat. Dead, he whispered next to her ear. Don't let your body tense up, keep an open mind and never use up all of your energy, otherwise you end up like Rias. Akino looked to Rias. The young redhead was barely able to keep her eyes open as she continued to try to pull herself free. A small smirk crossed Naruto's lips as he clicked with his free hand. Rias found herself pushed out of the ground and landed on her behind in a rather unladylike position. The hole she had been stuck in now had branches sticking out of it. She figured they must have pushed her out. Her eyes snapped up to where a statue like Akino stood. She didn't dare to move with the knife-like claw against her throat. It slowly pulled away, only to be replaced by a hand ruffling her hair. You are both improving greatly, but you are both struggling to stand. If we push any further forward, you will end up damaging your bodies. We should call it a day now. Akino nodded into his hand before stepping away, showing she was okay. After all, she was a rook. She could take a lot more damage than any other piece, not to mention she had a higher constitution, and she could last for a lot longer than Rias could, at least at the moment. Though Naruto was right, even she was on her last legs. He moved over to his king, extending a hand down to her, which she took, allowing herself to be pulled up before falling into his chest, her eyes closed shut and her breathing quite shallow. Did I do good? Her voice was so soft and meek. In this state she couldn't fight off a piece of paper. You did. He rubbed her back gently before picking her up in his arms in the standard princess carry. Now let me take care of the rest, Rias. Okay Naruto, can we watch anime again tonight? She asked this question so often, and Naruto knew he only had one real answer, that is unless he wanted the waterworks to start again, of course. I shall prepare some tea to help heal your body and then fix you both some snacks for tonight. Rias nodded and snuggled in closer, grabbing onto the loose shirt that he wore. Akino gave a small giggle at the scene. Her king only ever acted like this around her queen. Around him she was reduced to a girl, no longer the heiress of Gremory. No, she was just Rias. Something else though caught her attention. In the end, it seemed that they were able to get him dirty, if only a little. The dirt and dust from Rias had wiped against his clothing, creating a nice smear, possibly even staining it. Sometimes, Akino felt out of place, mostly in moments like these. The two of them were so close, like siblings, only they never fought. She stiffened slightly as she heard the almost ghost-like steps of Naruto pause. Akino, we should get you cleaned up for tonight, unless you like being all sweaty, that is? I suppose I should. Will you be bathing Rias, or shall I? She smirked slightly at her words. Maybe she would be able to get a reaction out of him? I believe Grafia will. Naruto was not going to rise to her bait. I will be washing myself. But you didn't even break a sweat fighting us? Akino voiced her confusion. Though her response, at least initially, was a shrug of the blonde shoulders. I like to think when I am bathing. Now, are you able to walk on your own, or should I call upon my plants to carry you? I'm fine, just be careful with Rias, she looks so cute when she is all tired out. Indeed. A fog crept in, yet Akino stood there blinking in shock. Naruto had just said that Rias looked cute, openly. Well, he has said it before, but still it was strange to hear the normally calm and collected Naruto expression direct emotion towards someone. His bath had been promptly cancelled. Apparently all mid-class devils and above were being ordered to hunt down a stray devil in the city of Lilith. He was clad in his GI, the uniform he wore when he battled against Sarorg. The same devil mentioned stood beside him, tilting his head to the side as their target was described to them. A Nekishu, long black hair, no older than 14. Her name was Kuroka, and she was wanted for the murder of her king and heir of the Ami pillar. They had to be weary. She had fallen to the temptations of senjutsu and lost her mind. Now she was little more than a savage beast that needed to be put down. If you come across Kuroka, shoot a flare into the air and try to stall her until help can arrive, the devil leading the witch hunt spoke as his final instruction. After all, they already had the areas they were meant to be looking through. Naruto had a very large area of land to cover, though with his ability to control plants and his somewhat telepathy with them, it was easier for him to cover larger areas than others. He turned his head lightly and looked at Serorg. Take care of yourself out there, he trailed lightly. Serorg seemed to pick up on what Naruto meant to say. Yeah, this don't really feel right, but we have to do what we have to do. Also, look after yourself, Naruto, though I don't think I need to say that to you. The blonde gave a small smirk as he vanished in a cloud of fog, landing again in his designated position. He placed his hand on the ground, extending his connection to the plants, and simply waited. Someone would come and fetch him once she had been found. His lips pursed into a frown. She never seemed like the type to kill her king. Yes, it was clear that she wasn't happy, but with how hard she was working, there was a strong chance that she could be traded to another peerage. He doubted it was something like that, and she had to have a reason for doing this. He wondered what it was. Half an hour passed and Naruto felt something on the edge of his area. His frown deepened. Whatever it was being very careful. It was on the very edge, so he could tell that something was there, yet at the same time he could not tell what that something was. Then it broke into a light run, slowly becoming clearer and clearer. Naruto let out a sigh. Large branches moved and blocked her in, forming a dome over her that was covered in thorns. Damn it, Kuroka. He left his position on the ground, standing up and hovering over to where he had caught the cat. Because it was his branches, he didn't use enough of his magic to be considered a flare. His eyes were clenched shut as he arrived in front of the dome, thorns sticking out from both inside and outside. There was little ways to escape, and once you let a thorn cut you, his poison would enter your body. The dome dropped, and before Kuroka even had a chance to act upon her short-lived freedom, she was already bound once again. She looked up at the face of her would-be captor only to freeze in shock. Naruto. Kuroka. Kuroka dipped her head down, as far as she was able to, tears welling behind her eyes. Why did it have to be him? Why couldn't she have gotten anyone else? Though it seemed he wasn't attacking her, did he want to hear what she had to say? She lifted her head up ever so slightly, seeing his expectant eyes boring into her. He saw how strong I was getting. She got out, trying her best not to break down as she did. He want to kill SSSSS Shiron for power. I did it to protect Shiron NYA. She let out heavy breaths, looking down and waiting for his judgment. It was clear that now she was a stray. He was meant to kill her. Instead, she saw his feet come closer and suddenly felt a warm, comforting feeling surge through her body from her neck. His own was right in front of her. She tried to move her hand a little, but the branches tightened around her. She was truly stuck and at his mercy. Then, like the first time they met, the feeling faded, leaving her all alone again. Her hazel eyes looked to Naruto as he slowly pulled away, a small amount of her blood on his bottom lip. His tongue, which looked so soft, came out from his mouth and took in the last of her blood before meeting. He met her gaze. Vampires can recall memories from blood that they drink, so even if you lie to us, if we get some of your blood, we will eventually find the truth. He brought a hand up to his head, holding it tentatively as he thought, there is no way to back up your claim. You acted too quickly and have not given Makibuta a chance to leave behind any sort of plan. In this case, it would be my word and your own against the treason of killing your king. I do not need to tell you which one would win, do I? Kuroka's head sunk at his words. If there is no chance for me, please save Shiron. She doesn't deserve this, Naya. It would be best if Naruto started, but was drowned out by a ground-shaking roar. Countless numbers of flares shot up, showing the hulking form of a large creature. Naruto turned to it, his lips pressing into a thin line. Escape during this confusion. If you go back for your sister, then I cannot. Shiron was taken to jail, Naya. I will do what I can for her, Kuroka. Save yourself first. You are no use to anyone dead. With those words spoken, the branches holding her fell away. The raven-haired young teen looked around her in shock. It was just her and Naruto, yet he was letting her go. She looked towards the blonde, watching as he clenched his fist tightly, drawing a few drops of blood that landed on the ground. A large spider woman coming out from the tiny puddle that formed. Yes, master? Let Kuroka out safely. Try not to be seen. It appears that a tyrant Hydra has appeared. This close to the city, it could cause a lot of damage, so I believe that most devils will be heading there, yet still do be wary of where you are going. Once she is safe, deliver this message to Surzex. Naruto lifted his fingers up and a piece of parchment formed containing what he wanted to say. An ink seal closing it with the mark of Gremory. Arachne bowed her head as a smile crossed her face. I am glad. the Spider-Woman stated. This caused Naruto to raise a brow, one that quickly shot up even further, as he felt lips press against his own and a tongue try to worm its way into his mouth. It was small and a little coarse, giving it a very strange feeling. Slowly he responded to the expression made by Kuroka, bringing his hand up and cupping her cheek as she put as much as she dared into the kiss. They parted a few moments later with Kuroka looking down slightly. I won't ask you to leave, but thank you, Naruto-kun. I won't forget what you have done for me, Naya. Naruto gave a small nod before looking back at the tower creature, his hair turning white and his horns coming out as his nails grew longer. You're not going to hold back at all? You should leave before anyone finds you, Kuroka, and yes, I cannot let it reach Lilith. If so, I would need to go to the human world to buy manga and anime for Rias. I do not want to make such a long trip for one of her vices. Naruto rolled his shoulders forward, a large crack coming from them as he crouched down. I wonder if Sarorg is there yet? He mused slightly to himself before pushing off the ground like a bullet in the direction of the giant Hydra. Kuroka watching in awe as the ground he had been standing on was pushed down into the earth. She turned to the Spider-Woman and rubbed at the back of her head gingerly. So you're Naruto's familiar Naya? I am young Nekishu. Does he talk about me, Naya? Arcane came a soft smile at the hopeful look on the young teen's face. He does. He has also been looking over the reports that were made public on the Amy peerage to check over what kind of progress you were making. It is rare for my master to take an interest in someone. A smile worked its way across Kuroka's face. I have been watching him as well. The Gremory peerage is doing really well considering it consists of only a rook and a queen. I hope that he will be okay, Naya. To worry about my master. I find that funny, young Nekishu. Naruto brought himself to a stop, not far away from the Hydra, its scales a bright red as its jaws hissed and snapped at anything that got close to it. It was large, easily the size of a small castle. That was the issue with tyrant Hydras, they were incredibly large. A few devils lay dead at its feet. They had scored relatively well in the exams that had passed recently. By that he meant that they were in the top 20 or so that passed. The wind blew his obi lightly, causing the bell tied to it to ring in the air. That gentle sound drew the large creature's attention towards him. Such an ugly creature you are, Naruto spoke through thin lips, his pale eyes quickly scouting the creature out for any weakness. The standard rule of Hydras was to keep their heads attached, as when they were cut off, two more sprouted. Though if they were crushed, then it would need to expend energy ripping its own head away, but it could still do that, leading for another two to sprout. In the end, it was best to banish all thoughts of striking the head, to transfer everything you would do to the organs inside of the body. A head shot forward and snapped at Naruto. He sidestepped it with ease. The creature was sluggish compared to the lightning he had been dodging when he spared with Akino. He saw its feet and a smirk crossed his face. He snapped his fingers. Bramble, large bushes covered the feet of the creature, holding it in place somewhat, though it continued to struggle against its bindings, thrashing itself around, though its scales stopped his thorns from injecting their poison. Naruto clicked his tongue in irritation. He hadn't counted on these scales being so thick. He dropped himself closer to the ground, dodging the heads that struck again and again around him each time they came close, yet it was still not enough to strike the elusive vampire. There was a sickening crack behind him. Naruto turned to see Sarorg standing there, a light aura around his body as he seemed to strike one of the many heads with the back of his fist, knocking it away. Looks like our hunt has been called off. Apparently Hydras have flooded the underworld. The Mao are currently fighting against the Naga, who seem to be leading the forces. Though I didn't think this was your area? The raven-haired male questioned. Naruto rose a small brow at him before pointing to the ground. It was theirs. I came when I saw their flare go up. I wasn't expecting this. And I wasn't expecting you to have horns like that. I guess this is one of those vampire things, right? Something like that, Naruto responded as a large branch blocked a head that was trying to strike down on the duo, Sarorg staring at it with wide eyes. So is that, though his attention was brought to the nearby bushes as hundreds of smaller Hydras poured out. May the Mao help us all, Sarorg mouthed out as a nearly automatic response. In this kind of situation it seemed quite dire. From what they could gather there was no help coming, so they were on their own for the foreseeable future. Naruto pursed his fine lips into a thin line. Sarorg, if you can keep the bigger one off my back, I should be able to deal with the little ones as they come. Though really, I need a big enough strike to remove his scales. I can poison him, then it will slow down its responses and slowly put it into a death-like state. Sarorg gave a small grimace. Sounds nasty. It is, Naruto replied as he dropped to the ground, a thick fog forming around him before the fog started to turn into spears of ice. With a sharp click of his fingers they flew forward, taking down a large amount of Hydra that were running towards them, though it wasn't enough to cull the swarm completely. It thinned it, though if one were to look at it now and not from before they wouldn't even be able to say that. He drew a small amount of blood on his bottom lip. Sarorg, I cannot move from this spot for a while. My rival should at least be able to protect me while I prepare for this. He didn't wait for a response, already knowing that the son of Baal would do his best now. He sat down, crossing his legs in a meditative position as heavy thickets started to swarm out from around him. He summoned a few pieces of parchment, along with ink and a brush. Saror gave him a confused glance, but continued to battle against the claws, heads and tails that were trying to take out his rival. If Naruto thought this would work, then all he had to do was believe in him, though he saw the large bushes start to push back the coming swarm, though they were slowly figuring out how to move through it. He batted back a claw that came within feet of hitting Naruto, though the vampire didn't stop at all. Though now that he thought about it, his horns seemed to slowly be growing longer, while at the least they looked longer than when he had started the fight. He saw that Naruto placed a piece of paper on the branches coming from him, only for it to rapidly shoot out more and more, quickly covering even the already extended branches before he slowly stood to his feet, a little shaky as he did. Okay, I should not try to make that many explosive tags from a single multiplication seal. The white-haired vampire drew his hand up in front of his face and clicked his fingers. What happened next caught Saror off guard. The ground shook as the night sky quickly lit up in a blaze of orange and yellow, the cries of hydras filling the air. Even from the distance they were standing at, they were nearly buffeted of their feet by the shock wave. It was like someone had dropped a massive bomb on the coming swarm. Wonderland brambles. The shout from Naruto drew Saror's attention back to him, though he couldn't see any change until the ground a fair distance from the explosion fell away, showing large ice-covered thorn branches. Naruto stumbled back lightly to find his proper balance once more, finding his energy seemed to be rapidly filling, which was strange even for him. That should hold them off. A forest fire and then a pitfall. I can't do much more for a group that big. Can you still fight, Naruto? The teen in question turned at the sound of his rival's voice. I should be able to know. I am actually feeling a little better than when we started. Okay, great. I need your help with this thing. Turns out it can heal from my strikes before I can fully destroy a scale. Saror dodged another claw before striking it towards the ground and flying down with a sharp elbow. He certainly cracked the scale, but it healed nearly instantly. Think you can do that creepy vampire touch of death thing again? What Saror was referring to was when Naruto gathered a large amount of energy around his claws, apparently the energy that came off of that all but stopped regeneration and blood clotting. Saror had been in hospital for quite a few weeks after their first fight because of that. Naruto gave a small nod, forming a snake's head with his hand as a purple energy started to form on the tips of his claws. Then he felt it. His horns stopped growing, like they reached a wall, though they continued to push against it, trying to force their way through. It was like a dam trying to contain a river that just wanted to flow. The pressure was too much, and Naruto leaned forward, feeling sick from it before it finally broke. From his back, two long blade-like wings made of bone extended and clatter against one another in a sickening manner. He felt great, the best he ever had. He pointed his hand out to try again. Only this time the energy shot all the way up to his shoulder in an instant. He didn't pause for long. Crouching down and pushing off the ground with his clawed feet, he tore through the air like a bolt of lightning before sailing straight through the tyrant Hydra, with his outstretched hand appearing on the other side covered in the creature's innards. Saror snapped his gaze to Naruto for a moment. He had changed that much during a fight. His power seemed to be overflowing now. He was easily ready to his high-class exams. Not only that, but he just went into a Hydra and came out the other side in a split second. Nothing stopped him at all, not the bones nor the organs that were more than likely in place. He looked back at the Hydra. Surely it had to be dead now, though he saw it split straight down the middle and start healing. That's cheating. That has to be cheating. Saror could barely make out the reply of "just keep killing it" from Naruto over the thunderous cries of the Hydras. They were dying to the fire, the pitfall, and now this tyrant was crying as well. He wouldn't need to clean his ears for months after this. At least that was how it felt. He would still clean them, of course, because his mother taught him about proper hygiene. He watched as Naruto's second arm became like his first, with the purple energy flowing past his shoulder and leaving a trail that extended into his pale wings, giving them a light glow from the inside of the bone. Naruto didn't waste a single extra second and started to quickly cut down his Hydra, again and again. No matter how many times it split, he cut it. Saror was not so lucky. He didn't have an ability to cut like Naruto did. His was more of a crush, something that he was using to its fullest, though it still seemed to be taking some time to get it as small as Naruto's. He could no longer hear the blonde's words, though when he last did it sounded like he was counting. Now it was just screams of more Hydras than he dared to count. It was beyond a joke. They should have head back up by now. But no, there was nothing. He spared a glance around to see if he could see any signs of help arriving, though that turned out to be a mistake. When he turned back, this strange substance was in his face. It was like air, but heavier and of a purple tint. He coughed deeply and his lungs started to burn. Before anything else could happen, he felt a sharp kick in his stomach, knocking him out of the dark cloud. His eyes couldn't focus well, but there was a look of fear on Naruto's face, at least from what he could make out. Sarorg was wondering if his mind had slowed down. It seemed to take a really long time for him to reach the ground. He still hadn't yet. He turned his head slightly to see a large branch holding him up. Another came up to his face. A strange blue liquid seemed to be inside a flower on its end. It entered his mouth despite his weak protest and let the liquid out. His eyes shot out wide. It was blood. Someone was forcing him to drink blood. The branch retreated and Sarorg shot upright before rapidly blinking his eyes. He felt fine. He didn't feel like his lungs were on fire. He didn't feel really tired and everything seemed to be moving at a normal pace. He looked up at Naruto. The same liquid was running down his right leg. He pushed that aside. He could question it later. For now he seemed to be back in the fight. It wasn't really like he could question the teen anyway. He was finding it hard to hear himself think. Naruto spun quickly, his clawed feet tearing through the neck of one of the many mini hydras before he shot down the same neck with his claws, splitting it in half and causing it to split into two once again. He grit his teeth. This wasn't getting them anywhere. They were smaller now, but instead of a single tyrant like they had at the start, there was now close to 20. Sarorg was about to fly into the air, only to see Naruto coming down towards him. Tuki! He shouted out and made a large circle around himself with his hands as a gesture. Cover us Tuki. The young Bale blinked in shock before opening his mouth. I'll try. It seemed that Naruto had heard him and nodded, pointing to the ground. The energy around his arms all shot up into his wings as he flew and landed between all the tyrants. Sarorg moved fast behind him, dodging the strikes and the poison breath. Since when the hell did hydras have poison breath? He could question that later. When he landed next to Naruto, he pushed his Tuki to the max he could, feeling the incredible strain on his body before it burst, forming a very, very small dome around the two, barely enough to cover the both of them without them being squashed together, though it was tight. The air around them seemed to grow quiet as Naruto stretched his hands out in front of him, crossing them over one another. Hopefully this works, Naruto muttered to himself. Hallmark magic. Black Garden. He roared out and stabbed his wings into the ground. His power rose to a terrifying level and Sarorg was nearly knocked off his feet. There was such a level difference between the two. He couldn't question any further as it fell deadly silent around them. A few black roses sprouted outside of the Tuki barrier, then more, and more and more and more. They continued to multiply and spread out, climbing over everything and anything that got in their path, even going as far as to cover the pitfall, extinguish the forest fire and climb over the still-moving swarm beyond that, binding and trapping them to the ground. The Tuki barrier dropped. Sarorg could barely keep himself from dropping to the ground. The cries which could now be heard were becoming soft whimpers before finally dying out altogether. Even in his uneasy state, Sarorg was able to look on in awe. Naruto was a pillar, an indestructible force of nature much like his namesake, though if you asked him he would say it meant fish cake. To create something like this, how much energy would that take? He looked at Naruto only to see his hair fade back to blonde, his horns foul themselves away and his wings vanish into the air as he fell face forward, only to be caught by Surzek's Lucifer. The young Bale jolted backwards in shock only to trip and feel a comforting pair of arms slowly lower him to the ground. I believe this is the first time I have seen Naruto knock himself out. Grafia. Surzek mused lightly with a fond smile on his face. Indeed, you can rest now, young Sarorg. The Nagas have already been dealt with. This was the last and most dense area. Your fight was broadcast to the Underworld after that large explosion, Grafia responded. She was the one whom had lowered Sarorg to the ground. The search for Kuroka had been cancelled due to this event. You both performed well beyond your duties here today, and it will not be forgotten. To think though that Naruto would give you his blood. He hasn't done that for anyone else, well at least that I know of. Sarorg. Surzek was cradling Naruto against his chest, smiling fondly at the two boys. I will see to it that you are both rewarded. Grafia, if you could bring young Sarorg with us, we will have them healed in the Gremory manner. Understood, Lucifer-sama. Hey Lucifer-sama, can I pass out now? Sarorg questioned, barely able to keep his eyes open. Surzek looked at him for a moment in confusion before chuckling. Of course, we will take care of everything from here. Rias found it very, very hard to be mad at Naruto. He had of course skipped out on their arranged anime night, though she had seen why. Everyone had seen why. Sona had come over to ask if he was okay, and she could understand why. The final shot that was aired was her brother appearing and catching Naruto. Many of the pillar families were pushing for him to be promoted to high class from what they sure, the Bale even more so. They didn't want a member of their family to be saved by a mid-class. It was embarrassing. Now though apparently there was a growing fan base for the two of them, that being Sarorg and Naruto. Their tag team battle to save Lilith from the swarm of Hydra had already made it to the highlights on most channels, even pushing back magical Leviathan. That in itself was impressive. It also wasn't his choice, that along with the fact that she had met a new person because of his actions. Apparently Naruto had convinced her brother that they needed to look after a young girl. She didn't talk, but she was adorable in Rias' eyes. Apparently the Phoenix family had been ordered by the council to wipe out the Nikomata population last night. It was one of the reasons they did not help in the defense of Lilith. Now Rias sat in Naruto's room. Akino had gone to gather some tea for them both. Naruto of course had blood ready for him to drink when he woke up. It was stored in a freezer nearby with a microwave ready to heat it to body temperature. It had been a few days since the event. Sarord was released 2 ago, and after having a rest day has started training again, claiming that it was pretty embarrassing to be saved by your rival, something he didn't want to feel ever again. Though on that line of thought, Sarord had been approached by many senjutsu practitioners, all of them wondering how he was able to extend his Tuki past his body. He gave them the only answer he could: I couldn't allow myself to fail when Naruto was trying so hard. It didn't give them much to go on. It seemed that either a mutation happened in the young Bale's body, or he just pushed himself to a level that others hadn't before. A small groan drew her attention to the bed. Naruto's eyes seemed to be twitching rapidly before slowly opening. He stared at the ceiling for quite some time, motionless, just staring blankly. How long was I out for? 4 days, Rias replied calmly. I am sorry for not making it on time, he spoke weakly, slowly sitting up and giving her a wide smile. Rias just shook her head. Don't worry about something like that. We're all just glad that you're okay. The door creaked open, showing Grafia, Surzex and Akino standing there. Just behind them was the white-haired girl that her brother had brought home after the large event. The council just finished voting, Surzex started, a smile worming its way across his face. Congratulations on setting a new record. You are officially the first person to hold the title of mid-class for less than 3 months before becoming a high class. Naruto blinked a few times, his lips pursed slightly as he thought about it. That is good, I guess. Are you feeling okay, Naruto? Rias questioned nervously, causing the others to look at her in slight confusion. Naruto was the foremost in that group. I feel fine, all things considered. Why? It's just her voice trailed and she couldn't finish her sentence. I believe it is the first time that Rias-sama has seen you injured, Naruto-san, Grafia responded. It is rightful for her to be worried. Rias shrunk away as Naruto looked to her. I'm fine, though I think that I need to speak to Surzex. Naruto saw the slight twitch in Grafia's brow. She somewhat disliked it when Naruto addressed him so informally, though she also knew that her idiot husband had asked Naruto to call him as such. The others looked to Surzex to see him slowly nodded his head. Chiron walked forward, her body swaying lightly as she did, stopping not too far away from Naruto, yet she was not too close either. She bowed her head a little and looked into his eyes. In that moment Naruto could tell she was similar to him. Just how would her story pay out? Thank you, she spoke softly before turning on her feet and leaving the room. Rias and Akino looked confused. It was the first time they had heard her speak. Yes, she had been around them the past couple of days, but it was either just shakes or nods of the head to communicate. They watched Chiron leave, or as Rias had taken to calling her, Koneko, because she was cute and looked kinda like a small kitten. They offered small get well soons and seen you shortly to Naruto before they followed after her, leaving Grafia, Surzex and Naruto alone in the room. In the blink of an eye the door closed and Grafia distorted the dimension around them to keep other from hearing, or even seeing inside. I guess I should start from the top, though I already believe that you are both quite aware of the fact that vampires can gain the memories of others via drinking their blood, correct? Naruto questioned, seeing them both nod ever so lightly. Makubuta Amy was planning on forcing Chiron to activate Senjutsu before taking her life in a very old and forbidden ritual that would increase his power to new heights. Kuroka, Chiron's older sister, attacked with the intention of holding him off long enough for Chiron to get away, though she lost control of her Senjutsu in that moment and accidentally dealt a lethal blow. Naruto sunk back slightly into his bed, letting out a sigh as he looked up at the roof above him. That is troubling, Surzex mused. I would still prefer that the heir of Amy did not die, but even if she has her reasons, Kuroka is still now a stray devil that will be hunted. I understand, Naruto responded softly. We will be able to protect Chiron, or as she is being called lately, Koneko, for a time. Though if she doesn't become a member of a peerage in the next couple of months, then things will become more difficult, though that may be extended due to the fact that something is still happening in Europe, Surzex continued. Naruto pursed his lips together slightly. Europe, his home was there, or what was once his home. Someone was breaking rules in the countries just outside of Romania, making it look almost like vampires were the cause. I want to look further into that. Though I am sure vampires are not the cause, I may be able to use some of my mother's old contacts to speed along the search for an answer. It will most likely turn into a diplomatic issue soon. Sarah Fall is already starting to pull her hair out over it. Now she also has to clean up this mess with the Nagas. Apparently they were a rouge group that the Hindu faction is casting them aside completely. Surzex let out a tired sigh as he rubbed at his forehead. Even still, they were able to get their hands on quite a few Hydras from Greece and somehow bring them all into the underworld. Two separate incidents happening at the same time, Naruto murmured. The Hydras seemed to have no leadership. They were just charging blindly forward. If they were under the control of Naga, myself and Serorg would more than likely have perished. The room seemed to grow a little colder after that, as if the conversation had taken a very different turn from how they had expected it to. Grafia cleared her throat a little to draw attention to herself. It is highly unlikely for such a thing to happen, Naruto-san. Tartarus is where the Titans are kept, or as it is also known, the gate to hell. It is possible that a handful of tyrants walked into Tartarus by mistake, drawing other Hydra with them, because as we know, the underworld that we live in and the one from the Greek mythology is connected by little more than a handful of doors. The Naga, should they be Rouge, could have affiliated themselves with Rouge Fallen and used their entrance to the underworld. I think it is best to look at this as if it were two separate incidents rather than a conjoined attack. It will be taken into consideration in the next meeting, Naruto, Surzex offered him with a sad smile. You were fond of Kuroka, weren't you? She is a good person who has been dealt a bad hand. Naruto slowly pulled his head down from looking at the ceiling and looked towards Surzex, offering an awkward smile. I do plan on saving her, though that is out of my hands at the moment. I cannot even attempt anything like that until I have my own set of pieces. Ajuka said that it will take some time to make your pieces given your unique abilities. Speaking of which, what happened and what was that form of yours? Surzex questioned. He had actually been waiting patiently. At least he thought so, Grafia not so much, for Naruto to wake up so that he could shed some light onto the subject. Naruto hung his head a little. I think it is Wrath Drive. An ability that is unique to the Carmilla family. It forces our bodies to change into a machine built for war the more emotional we become. I have been looking through my mother's memories, but there is just too much for it to be done quickly with the amount of blood I have from her. Though if it is Wrath Drive, mine is still not in its perfected form. Once it is mastered, you can enter it freely. It no longer becomes dependent on your emotions, but rather the amount of blood you can gather while inside of it. In response to the Wrath Drive of the Carmilla, the Teeps mutated and formed something called the Judgment Weapon, a sentient weapon that takes the shape of a person's soul and is able to drain blood from whatever it strikes and transfer it to the wielder, who pours more blood into the weapon to increase its strength. The Carmilla augment the body while the Teeps augment the soul. Naruto finished looking at the two across from him. How certain are you that this new ability of yours is this Wrath Drive that you speak of, Naruto-san? Grafia questioned, and rightfully so, she believed. At the moment it seems to start activating as soon as I enter my combat form. Naruto running a hand across his chest and reaching for his tattoo. I can't say for certain, not until it starts to change further. I know what the Wrath Drive of my mother looked like, and currently mine does not match that. I have no doubt that there will be differences, but I expect the coloring to be similar at least. Surzex nodded his head lightly. Well, it seems that you have answered all my questions. You should be careful, Naruto. You have gained the attention of the High Council. They will be watching you closely from now on. I will be weary, more so now than before, of those dust bags, Naruto spoke as he stretched his body out, throwing the sheets off of his body. He could already tell he was wearing pants, so it wasn't that big of a deal. I think I'll have a shower then join the others. Understandable, though Chiron, or Koneko if you will, hasn't been informed of her sister's actions. It seems as though she holds a deep hatred for Kuroka, the Mao Lucifer told Naruto quite forwardly. This caused the blonde to let out a sound of irritation. It is not my place to mend their relationship. I will merely give them the chance to do so. Okay, well bye, and congratulations on your promotion, Naruto. We will see Ajuka next weekend so that he can get a blueprint for your pieces, Surzex offered before Grafia put a hand on his shoulder, a large magic circle appearing below him. I have to go do paperwork. He shot a childish glance to his wife, because someone is a big meanie. They vanished, as did the distortion around his room, allowing Naruto to go into his shower and wash away the couple of days of grime he built up laying in his bed. Once he stepped out of the shower, he placed some blood in the microwave and set it to heat as he got dressed. Both tasks being finished at the same time allowed him to grab the packet right away and quickly drink it while it was still fresh, or at least it felt that way. It somewhat sated his thirst, causing him to frown. He would need to drink more from now on, it seemed. Maybe this new form of his was a sign of his evolution as a vampire instead of the Wrath Drive? He pushed the thought away as he continued down the halls, coming to the room that had so far been called the playroom, though Naruto preferred to call it the day room. It was the room that was given to Rias and her peerage to spend their days in, where they could rest, eat or play. Really, it was free for them to use in any means they saw fit. So when they were not sparring, training or doing stuff outdoors, they were often found in here. He pushed the doors open and found today was no exception, apart from the fact that as soon as he opened the door he found a sudden weight clasped tightly to the bottom of his loose white shirt, along with the fact that a small child was now hiding behind him, fearing for what seemed to be her life. Naruto looked up and saw the looks that Akino and Rias were directly to the now dubbed Koneko. Apparently she was just too cute for them to hold back. He felt her tug a few times on his shirt, helped she trailed in an emotionless tone. Rias, Akino, you are scaring Koneko, calm yourselves, he reprimanded lightly, though his words still rung heavy as the two girls seemed to snap out of their states and move to take seats at the large table. He took in the appearances of the girls. Apparently they all wanted to wear sundresses with light frills around the hems. He briefly wondered if Koneko had a choice at all in the matter. Naruto lightly dropped his hand down to the side and offered it to Koneko, who stared at it for a bit, unsure of whether to take it or not. Don't worry, my fangs are up here. He offered her a smile and pointed to his mouth, though her reaction was a few confused blinks at him before she gently placed her small hand inside his larger one, letting him walk her over to the table and place her in a seat next to him. So Naruto, what did you and Oniai-sama talk about? Rias prodded a little, question and accusation clear in her young eyes. Nothing you need to worry about, Rias, he answered curtly as a cup of black coffee was placed in front of him. To his side he saw Kaneko's nose scrunch up slightly at the smell. Do you not like bitter things? I like sweets. Naruto, don't brush me off like that. Era, it seems that Rias is being tossed to the side. Kuroka panted as her feet hit the ground. She had managed to escape a pursuit team that came after her just moments ago. Now there was something new, people in dark robes that seemed to lurk on the corner of her vision. They were constantly there, hanging right behind her shoulders, yet they weren't attacking. She broke through the tree line and jumped to the middle of a clearing, instantly finding herself surrounded by these robed and hooded people. Why are you chasing me? You will become a tool for us to use as we see fit, Kuroka of the Nekashu. One spoke. They were standing slightly in front of the rest of the strange people. Our leader has taken an interest in you, and as such you are now a charge and tool for us to use. Naya? She questioned in confusion, raising her hands up and forming fists, ready to attack. Those that were chasing you have been incapacitated. Their memories altered. There is no escape from this, Kuroka, though we doubt you will wish to after a time. We are what you seek. We are change, we are honor, protection, safety, history and shadow. The person in front extended their hand out ever so slightly and a thick fog rolled in, swallowing up the entire group and causing them to vanish from the earth once more. Sarord was panting, sweat dripping down his brow as he clenched and then loosened his fists. He hadn't been able to replicate that barrier he made since that time. That was a lie actually, he had, just it only extended a few inches from his skin, not the dome he made last time. A growl escaped his throat. How useless had he been? Maybe the elders were right, maybe without the power of destruction he wasn't worthy to be called a member of the Bailiff family. He shook his head strongly, his raven-colored hair sticking to his forehead. Don't you lose to anyone before we fight again. Naruto had said that to him, yet he lost, right in front of him, tossing his words back in his face. Naruto had to save him. Off to the side, watching her king struggle, was Kisha Abaddon. She was blonde, the same age as Naruto and Sarord, making her 14. Those that saw her could already see that she would grow to be beautiful. Her long blonde hair was pulled back into a ponytail as her green eyes flickered between what she was reading and her king. Her body was still in its developing stages, yet she trained hard alongside Sarord. She didn't want to be a disappointment to him. Seeing him in this state was beyond heart-wrenching for her. Kisha jumped up from where she was seated and ran over to Sarord, who looked ready to start pulling his hair out by its roots. Sarord-kun, you said that Naruto-san was a vampire, correct? She had never actually met Naruto before, though she had seen his match against her king. He was incredible, not to mention she got to watch their fight against the Hydras like the majority of the Underworld. It had been all over the news the past couple of days, so much so that people were calling Naruto and Sarord the strongest of this generation. That was heavy praise, no matter who it came from. He is, though I don't see how that makes much of a difference now, Sarord nearly bit out, only containing himself because of who it had been that questioned him. This book, Kisha started, showing the book she spoke about, along with the page she was read, which just so happened to have a picture of someone drinking blood, speaks about how blood is a fuel for vampires. She saw the look on his face, and noted that she would need to explain further. She turned the page. Now it was a vampire, drawn with fangs and claw-like hands. Dripping from his wrist was blood. Underneath him was someone drinking the blood. The next slide showed a person with muscles pulling off a strange pose as if to make themselves look better. It says that vampire blood can push the bodies of people past their current limits, making humans seem like demigods. In the fight you said that Naruto gave you his blood. Yet it was blue, not the red that is normally depicted. Sarord paused at her words, scratching lightly at his chin. Naruto isn't a normal vampire. Though if that was the case and he pushed my body past its limits, that means I just have to get stronger and bring myself past that level. He gave a huff and walked across the stone that littered the room. There were a few cracks that lined it, mostly caused by him testing out new techniques or by sparring with others. In the corner of the room he picked up a set of ankle and wrist weights, strapping them on and doing a couple of kick punches and kicks. Keisha, can you order some heavier weights for me? Of course, Seroig-kun. She gave a light bow of her head. Seroig refused openly for her to call him with the sama suffix, leaving her stuck with kun for some form of respect and emotion. Also, thank you really, I think I was getting a little too frustrated there. He didn't look back as he spoke to her, though he did give a smile. What would he do without his queen? Probably put himself into a very early grave. Keisha had a slight tint of red come into her cheeks. You are no problem, Seroig-kun. What weight do we need to increase to? Seroig continued with the ones on his limbs and pursed his lips slightly. Well, currently it is 100 kilograms each, 220 pounds, 200 kilograms for each one should be the next step. That is quite the jump, are you, Sue? I am sure. I don't have the ability to use magic like the rest of you, so all I can do is train my body and my mind to be the strongest fortress possible. If I can't train with at least that much on, my goal will only get further and further away from me. As it is, Naruto is now on a completely different level from when we first fought. I don't have the right to challenge him as I am now. Seroig clenched his fist right, but one day, I will be able to stand by his side and gladly let him call me his equal and rival. Keisha nodded and smiled along with Seroig, though inwardly she was worried. There would come a day when Seroig's peerage would have to fight against Rias. When that day comes, she would need to protect her king's peerage. He would become too caught up in his fight with Naruto to do it himself. The early morning sun peered in through Naruto's window, disturbing his sleep. It was not the only disturbance he had, though. The first was last night at some time he had not bothered to pay attention. His door was opened and Rias had sneaked into his bed. Thankfully she would at least wear her panties and one of his shirts to bed now. It had made life easier for everyone. Currently she was curled up against him, her lips pressed softly onto his collarbone as her arms wrapped around him like a constrictor. Naruto leaned down and placed a soft kiss on her forehead, causing her nose to crinkle slightly before she slowly started to wake up. His king was not a morning person. She would in fact prefer to sleep in bed all day if she could, as long as she could watch her anime there. That was. His bed and now himself were covered with her scent like always. It seemed that she washed her hair with apple-scented shampoo yesterday, though, something that Naruto found to be a rather useless piece of information. It was merely something to occupy his time until she finished waking up. Her seafoam eyes slowly blinked open. They were unfocused, and she was more than likely still in a daze because of it. He watched as they slowly sharpened before a smile worked its way across her face. Good morning, Naruto-kun. Good morning, Rias, he replied naturally. It had been nearly 2 years since Koneko had joined her peerage. Yes, Koneko had opened up a bit more and found herself coming to accept a position as a rook in Rias' peerage. Though she was still a character for few words, she now seemed to look up to Naruto like an older brother kind of figure. Something that Rias could not see. Having now reached the age of 13, Rias was growing into a young woman, and with this stage of her life came new emotions. She had formed a longing to be with her queen constantly, wanting to be ever closer to him and for him to never leave her side. Naruto had turned 17 not long ago. He had finished the lessons for the standard schooling system already and was now working on university subjects under the gaze of Grafia and Venelana. They were actually quite shocked to find him going down the path of a doctor. His reasoning, though, was quite simple. If he knew how to fix something, it would make it easier to break. He had even put his new studies to use in his sparring sessions with the older peerages. Though he was still outclassed more than a few times, he had managed to secure a handful of wins against them now. Rias untangled her arms from Naruto and sat up to stretch herself out, her still developing chest jiggling ever so slightly at the movement. Naruto sat up, holding up 3 things, then 2, then 1 before a knock sounded at his door. The person on the other side didn't wait for a reply before opening the door and walking inside. Akino stood there, fully dressed for the day, her eyes widened slightly at the scene she had seen hundreds of times before. Era, is it going to be like this every morning, Rias? It was a line that Akino had repeated nearly every morning since this first started to happen, and like every other time Rias blushed and started to trip over her words. I will make sure that Rias is ready for breakfast shortly, Akino. Would you now go and wake Koneko and get her ready for the day? Naruto spoke with well-practiced grace. Akino gave a small nod of her head. I can do that, though I believe that we are having guests for breakfast this morning, the Sidri family if I am not mistaken. Both Naruto and Rias gave a small nod and Akino left, leaving them to get ready for the day. It was the normal routine. Naruto would move to go towards his shower. Rias would try to follow him in. Naruto would then push Rias out of his room and tell her to use her own, ignoring the cute pout on her face and closing the door, locking it from his side and going about the rest of his morning. He quickly bathed and dressed himself in his black slacks and white shirt. Having brushed his teeth while he was in the shower, he stepped out of his room. Grafia was standing there, her hands knitted together residing in front of her lap. He quirked a brow at her before pushing off the ground with his left foot and hovering in the air an inch above the ground. "You don't normally come to greet me in the mornings, Gray-chan." Their bond had developed over the years. Grafia was kind of like an older sister to Naruto now, something which she was secretly happy with. He did take his duties as a queen seriously. He knew how to be formal and when he needed to act in such a manner. Seeing as they were both alone, she would allow him to call her by his affectionate name for her, that being Gray-chan. Grafia gave a small nod of her head. "Indeed I do not. Though both Lucifer-sama and Leviathan-sama are awaiting in the dining area, I thought it prudent that the queens of Gremory arrive together in a faux formal manner." "I take it that the heiresses have already been seated then?" Naruto's question was received with a small nod. "Very well. I was under the impression that Sona had acquired a queen." "Indeed. This is her first time being seen outside of the Citri holdings. Now, we should not keep them waiting any longer." With that, the two made a brisk pace down the halls, coming to the main dining area where Naruto dropped back down to the ground as Grafia opened the doors. Rias instantly turned around to face him and Naruto inwardly sighed. She needed to get a better rein of her emotions. Acting in such a manner in a formal setting could give off a bad vibe, making the people around her feel that she didn't deem them as important as a door opening. Though the bright smile on her face at his appearance managed to stem the feeling he had to chide her over her behavior, at least for now. He would see to it later. He took his position behind Rias, much like Grafia took her own behind Surzek's. Naruto spared a glance in Sona's direction, seeing a young-looking girl flinch under his impassive gaze. She wore glasses, much like Sona did, a semi-frame, only covering the lower portion of the glasses, but it was a light blue in tint. Her hair was long, straight, and dark, and she seemed to be trying to avoid his gaze. Did she believe he would think different of her because she was heterochromic? It was interesting, not something to really be ashamed of. Her left eye was a bright violet, much like Sona's own pair, while her right was a light brown. Her level of magical ability, at least from what Naruto could feel, was average. It was slightly lower than Akino's, though she was still young and Akino was also part fallen, giving her a natural boost. Naruto saw Sona's face fall slightly, having noticed him inspecting her queen, and quickly turned to the side to whisper something to her. Naruto saw the girl widen her eyes slightly in shock before giving him an uneasy smile and a nod. He gave a small blink before returning her nod, her cheeks gaining a light dusting at the action. PSSSD. Naruto tilted his head down ever so slightly, seeing Rias looking in his direction and covering her mouth from the others to speak to him. PSSD. It seemed she was insistent on whatever she wanted to say. Naruto leaned down, placing his ear next to her so that she could speak her mind. "Yes, Rias? What do you think of Sona's queen?" She saw Naruto quirk a brow at her, and she sighed lightly. "Don't do that, I saw you inspecting her." She hissed out a little. "She seems to hold the sacred gear. Her level of magic is also adequate for her age. No, rather I would say impressive, seeing as she was just a normal human until just recently. It is a fine choice for her first peerage member," Naruto replied calmly, seeing Rias nod a few times. "Thanks." She beamed him a quick smile and went back to her breakfast. Naruto righted himself and glanced around the table. He could see that the majority of the Citri family was in good health. Apart from Seraphol, it would seem, she had the signs of sleep deprivation around her eyes, though they were very minor. Her eyes met his and she gave him a wide smile, and her eyes seemed to brighten a little. She cleared her throat and mouth of any food before dabbing her mouth a few times with the provided napkin. "Rias," she called, gaining the younger devil's attention. Rias stiffened slightly and cleared herself before looking to Seraphol. "Yes, Seraphol-sama? Would I be able to have a moment with your queen after breakfast?" That single sentence had been enough to draw all eyes onto Seraphol. Naruto would even say that Grafia's narrowed a little. Seraphol seemed to notice this as her own widened. "And no, not like that. There was just something he offered to help me with a while ago, and I was wondering if he would still be willing to." Eyes then turned to Naruto. It seemed that he was now under scrutiny. He mulled over his thoughts, wondering what the Mao could be referring to before he recalled their conversation after one of his training sessions with the girls. "I have the time to hear you out, Seraphol-sama." He saw her wince slightly, though because of the current situation he was not able to call her anything less, so she let it pass. Still, she wanted him to call her Levitan. Though she nodded at his words and breakfast seemed to continue. It was only when it was nearing the end that Sona spoke up, which shocked many. "Rias." Her call was quickly responded to by the heiress in question by the reply of Sona. "I believe that once Onisama has concluded with her duties that our peerages should be formally introduced to one another. Is this acceptable?" Rias winced at her stern friend. Was it really that hard to say, can our peerages get to know one another? She inwardly shook the thought away. She would never hear something so simple sounding from Sona. A soft smile spread across her face. There shouldn't be a problem. After breakfast we can vacate to the sunroom to speak more in private. It was stated for a number of reasons. One, so that the adults would leave them alone so that they were not under pressure to act in such a noble manner. Secondly, to inform Naruto of where they would be, and finally to let the servants know so that tea and biscuits could be brought to them. Though if you asked Koneko, it was only the final reason that truly mattered. The rest of breakfast went off without much conversation as the groups seemed to split apart. Serafall was about to approach Naruto before Grafia appeared next to him as Rias vacated the area. Grafia-san, he spoke softly. They were in hearing range of the others after all. She inwardly winced, for two reasons, the first because of the method he was forced to address her with, and secondly because of how she would have to address him in the current situation. Naruto-sama. She saw his eyes ice a little at the title. He always hated it with a passion, though he would tolerate it, barely mind you, for occasions like this. If something should go awry, do not hesitate to call me. Naruto quirked a brow before stepping forward and cutting others off from listening in by closing the distance between himself and Grafia to the point where they were almost flush against one another as they leaned into each other's ears. Is there something I should know about? Nothing I can speak about in current company. If you feel the need to find out, come and see me later tonight. She took a small step back and bowed to Naruto. I hope you have a pleasant rest of the day. And now you, Grafia-san. Naruto lightly bowed his head as they split apart, moving next to Serafall before giving a light bow of his head. You wanted to speak with me? Yes, let's go to the gardens. She went to grab his hand to lead him, only to freeze in place, slowly pulling her hand away and giving a strained smile as she turned on her feet and walked, hearing him fall into line just behind her. The walk was, in a word, quiet. Thankfully it didn't take long and the two found themselves in the lush green gardens of the Gremory house. They came to a fountain with seats nearby. They sat down and listened to the birds chirping. I will be blunt, Serafall stated in a serious manner. The situation in Europe is about to erupt and possibly break the fragile treaty we have in place. I have exhausted all other methods and found that the only one I haven't tried yet was your offer for aid. Can I still ask for your help? Arachna, Naruto called softly as a magic circle appeared behind him, his familiar stepping out and handing him his phone. You are always so prompt. To serve your whims I must be master. She gave a sly smile and faded back into her dimension, no doubt containing to listen to his conversation via the small spider she left in his room that attaches itself to his clothing each day. Naruto flipped open the phone and quickly scrolled through his contacts. He found what he was looking for and spared a glance to Serafall. One moment. Hitting the call button, he placed the phone up against his ear. Sipa Krolak Flare Dose. Serafall widened her eyes, a language that her natural devil skills couldn't pick up. There was a slight pause in conversation before Naruto gave a slight blink. Macno Duno Europe. Qualia Vapa. He pulled the phone away and closed it shut before placing it into his pocket. He looked up at Serafall and saw confusion on her face. They are looking into the situation. We speak in code and each person's is different, so it is easy to tell if someone has been sprung. Serafall nodded and looked down at her hands, fumbling with them, as if tripping up on what she wanted to say before she could even open her mouth. She took a breath to calm herself before looking at him with shaky eyes. What did Grafia say about me? A thin brow was risen at her question. Nothing yet, just that I should be careful around you, and if I felt that something was wrong to call her, he answered calmly, his magic slowly activating in case he needed to use it. The young-looking Mao dropped her head a little. She isn't wrong, you know. Her slight confession caught Naruto by surprise. To put simply, I like you, and that is dangerous. Naruto blinked at her a few times, wondering where she could possibly go with this. Grafia-san has already said that she will explain the situation to me, though I would prefer to hear it from your own mouth, Serafall. Serafall winced slightly at his words before letting out a sigh. My magic kills anyone that I try to love outside of the Citri family, she trailed, letting him take in her words. And that he did. That explains why you are referred to as a daddy's girl and why you shower Sona with as much affection as you do, simply because you can't give it to anyone else. Your mother married into the Citri family, meaning that she does not have that negating effect that one born from it would, though it is not what it seems. Violet eyes stared at him, slight anger. What do you mean? It is something you overlooked, or rather maybe something you have forgotten. I myself only remember because Grafia taught me not too long ago, maybe midway last year. There was at a point where the two of you were like sisters. You were inseparable. Now I believe that there was a time where you loved Grafia, not in the romantic sense, but maybe as you would Sona. Naruto gave a light wave of his hand to go along with the facts he was stating. Serafall widened her eyes as SH thought over what he said. That's true, but why didn't my magic work on her? A theory? Naruto offered. Seeing the girl nod her head frantically at him, he continued, it is not your magic in general, but rather your incredible affinity with ice. It forces itself into the bodies of those you love, causing them to shut down on a molecular level, leaving hardly any trace of tampering, thus giving you this remarkable kiss of death scenario. So someone with a high affinity for ice-based magic should be fine, like Grafia? Serafall exclaimed/questioned happily. Possibly. This is only a theory, one that is based on the practice of other magic affinities. Most prominent would be the Phoenix family. They are sometimes known to spontaneously combust when they enter an over-emotional state. I believe that your ice magic could very well fuel itself off of the monoamines. That being dopamine, noradrenaline and serotonin, or as they are sometimes also called the love chemicals. These chemicals reward you small, sometimes large amounts of pleasure or a simulated feeling of such, along with nervousness and many others when you perform actions for those that you hold strong feelings for, Naruto explained. He could probably see himself pushing his glasses up further on his nose. That is, if he wore any. He also wondered if this would look better if he was wearing a lab coat right now. Serafall was giving him a slightly confused look. Deciding to test his theory, Naruto leant forward and placed a kiss on her forehead, watching as she jerked backwards at the contact and blushed up a storm, lightly touching the place and looking over to him in worry. Why did you do something so stupid? Naruto stood in place and Serafall became increasing worried over him, slowly moving forward and repeating his name softly, moving to touch him only to see his eyes focus on her. Your magic is really powerful. It tried to attack me right away. Then how are you still alive? She questioned in shock, only to watch as he let out a breath and a few shards of ice formed around him. He tapped one with a finger, and it quickly changed into a spear before shattering into fine crystals that fluttered down to the ground and reflected light in every direction one dared to look. I was wondering if any ice magic would do. Your own ice is, in a sense, the most basic level of manipulation. It is just taken to the highest level possible with that. My ice is called dead ice. It feeds on anything it touches to keep itself alive. It is both weaker and stronger than your own in that regard, as without a source it is quite brittle, but with a decent source of nourishment, it can become nearly as hard as diamond. You fought off my magic though? Serafall questioned. Naruto gave a difficult expression at her question. I am not strong enough to fight it off completely. In fact, I feel quite sluggish, but my ice is currently eating yours, yes. Before Serafall could ask any more questions, Naruto's phone rang. It wasn't his usual tone, which told her that it was in a different contact group. Yes, it was a well-known fact to those that actually knew Naruto, that all devils got Dance with the Devil as their ringtone. This was not the same song. It was different, one she hadn't heard before, though it sounded almost like folk singing. She sometimes questioned his choice in music. He seemed to be waiting for it to reach a certain point before he hit the answer button. It seemed that there was a lot of codes that they had to do to reach this group. She wondered if Naruto would teach her so she could use them herself. Though as that thought was passing through her mind, she felt the ground around the explode as magical pressure rolled off of the once blonde. His horns were in full display, along with his wings and his long silky hair. The ground at his feet had frosted over completely as many of the flowers around them started to wither, the birds no longer chirping as their time had long since expired. Serafall was staring in shock at the blonde. She had seen the footage of him like that, but to feel it up close was something different. It was like he was on display, showing everyone the raw side of him as his powers reached through the roof and strike out at the sky. A plethora of magical circles opened up around them. The first one stepping out was Grafia, who had a hand extended at Serafall as soon as she landed. Her eyes narrowed to a dangerous level before she took in the full scene. The phone in Naruto's hand had somehow managed to survive and was viciously snapped shut. His jaw was clenched tight as he turned around and nearly glared holes through Serafall. I will be leading the team that goes after them. Serafall swallowed the lump in her throat as she forced herself to ask the question that needed to be asked. Why? They have made my old home their headquarters. I will create a list of minor bases that you can send whomever you like after. But I will be going after the main group. I will not accept no as an answer. Naruto had gotten what he wanted. There was only one other person with him, that being Grafia. She had taken it upon herself to make sure that he was okay. Plus, she was quite possibly the only one that would be able to stop him without killing him in a way that resulted in minimal harm to herself. She had, after all, taught him quite a bit. It was also because she understood that he would be emotional on this task, something that she doubted Serafall would be able to handle, and something that was well above Rias, as currently he was her emotional support. She examined Naruto, watching as black roses sprouted under his feet as he stormed forward. Grafia kept his pace, making sure not to fall behind in case he needed to be assisted, though when he flicked his hand out, a quick snap of his fingers following without a pause, she even wondered if she would have to raise a hand to help, other than lending her shoulder for him when this was over. Large dead-looking branches shot out from the ground and encompassed the once destroyed buildings, coiling, constricting and crushing everything under the stone walls and roofs. At least that is what it looked like. Rogue Priest jumped up from the rubble, seemingly uninjured. Grafia prepared herself to act only to watch as Naruto dragged his foot along the ground, disturbing the snow and kicking it up into the air where it turned into long thin spears, hundreds if not thousands of them, sitting there, waiting for a command, devour them. It came and they flew like arrows that were fired by an elven legion. She watched in slight awe as they struck the ground and priests alike showering the entire area where the enemy had stood and forming a cloud of ice shards and powdered snow. Without pause a thick fog flew past Naruto towards the scene and tightly wrapped around the area before muffled screams ran through the air, and the smell of blood became as heavy as the red in the snow underfoot. When the fog cleared, it was clear what had happened. The moisture in the fog had been used to create more spears of ice, which then surrounded the priests before impaling them, sticking them to the ground and running through their organs, killing them in a rather painful way as they seemed to have suffered from flash freezing around the entrance and exit wounds. Naruto, though, had not seemed to stop moving. He walked up to a pile of rubble and had large branches crush it for him. Apparently there was people hiding inside of it. It also showed a trapdoor beneath it. I can hear them panicking through the ground. This is the fate that they have sown for themselves. Choosing to establish your camp in the ruins of a vampire coven is a definition of insanity. It has not even been 10 years since I was last here. There was an unearthly creaking sound as the large metal doors were pulled apart, locks and all, so that Naruto could descend further down. He did not wait for Grafia and merely dropped straight into the darkness below him, his feet touching the cold stone below him with a thunderous crack that followed up the hall as the stone threatened to split and drop the earth upon them. Fluorescent lights flickered their power supply, possibly damaged from his actions just then. Twisting his back foot slightly, he pushed off the ground, thundering down the hall, a thick aura forming around his body as his speed increased. Large metal doors coming to life and trying to close on top of him, only to find themselves torn to pieces as he moved through them. Men stood between, trying to stop him with a shower of lead and light. It was as effective as the doors, only serving to splash his clothing with blood. In less than minutes he reached the final room in what seemed to be a labyrinth of tunnels. The scientists mostly already lay dead. One was standing by a computer, his fingers quickly tapping away at the keys. Though that had paused, he had stopped in his tracks and looked to the door in anguish as it was ripped apart, the metal having squealed under his clawed hands. What do you want?" the man questioned in a panic, adjusting his glasses and looking around the room as if trying to find something he could use to escape his current situation. He was the last one left, having killed his fellow scientists to stop them from feeling misery at this thing's hands, yet his gun had run out of bullets when it came to him. Naruto stepped forward and looked around the room, seeing a test tube in the middle of it. From what he could see through the somewhat murky water, someone was inside. "Do you peons know where you have decided to set up your base?" He turned his gaze to the man, and if Naruto was not mistaken, he may have started to sweat under his gaze. "I in some ruins that one of our teams found. There was a massive fight here, but it isn't recorded anywhere, so we figured no one cared about this PPP place." He stuttered out, blinking a few times at how high his voice had become near the end. "This was my home, a place where many I considered friends, and where the last of my family lays for rest. Yet it has been ransacked, rebuilt, and desecrated. What reason could be so important that you would defile this piece of both history and strong sentiment?"